around 15-16 degrees Celsius, but the sunshine should hopefully start breaking through a touch more here into the afternoon. Again, potential for some brighter spells arriving into Northern Ireland later on, but the bulk of England and Wales are likely to hold on to a good amount of cloud as we head throughout much of Sunday. But a touch more warmth here will allow those temperatures to peak around 24 degrees Celsius in the southeast. We'll start to see more on those showers drifting their way southwards, so some further pulses of rain pushing in across England and Wales throughout the evening and overnight. Otherwise, some clear spells developing, and with that northwesterly wind filtering in some fresher conditions, tonight should hopefully be a touch more comfortable for sleeping. Many of us seeing temperatures drop down to 10 to 14 degrees Celsius. Some early rain to contend with then across areas in the south, but that will eventually clear its way off. Some scattered showers just pushing in across North Sea coastal regions and well for the far northwest of Scotland. But for Wales, western areas of England will hopefully see the sunshine breaking in a lot more as we head into the afternoon. It should dry up quite nicely. If you manage to see that sunshine, temperatures not too bad, 20-23 degrees Celsius, but it is still going to be a breezy day out there, and that will certainly affect the feel of things if you're caught in it. The sunshine, though, should turn more widespread for many of us, and temperatures are set to climb. Enjoy your day.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
said,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
French authorities first seized the Lady T, and that's an Eastbourne-based fishing vessel. And next, they fined its skipper, Philip Edwards, €30,000 to release his boat. Now, the Lady T, operating legally under UK jurisdiction, was intercepted by a French patrol ship near the Somme Bay. Now, the incident has sparked massive outrage among British fishermen and is renewing calls for the government to stand firm against French overreach in national waters. Well, I'm delighted to say I'm now joining with Charlotte Edwards, who's the husband. Husband Philip is the skipper of the Lady T and is out fishing right now. Charlotte, welcome to the show. I've got to say, here at GB News, we are hugely supportive and appreciative of British fishermen and fisherwomen. Do a fantastic job. So if you're nervous about the interview, please don't be. I want to ask you how on earth this happened. I mean, there's been a lot of talk, for example, that the Lady T didn't have the correct paperwork, it was fishing illegally, and the French decided to pounce. What's the reality?
The paperwork just slipped through. It was an admin error. The other two boats had the permits, and unfortunately, his didn't at the time. He wasn't in as far in as they said he was. He was about 800 metres in their water. He wasn't near the 12-mile.
He was intercepted by the Pluvier. That's a French Navy ship. No, by the way, the sort of French Navy ships that just seem to give an escort to illegal dinghies coming into British waters, suddenly pouncing into action. The only boat they've managed to stop seems to be the Lady T.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good morning and welcome to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News. Bridget Phillipson, the Secretary of State for Education, will join me. As the Labour government marks its first anniversary, what's her summary of the past 12 months? And has she spoken to Chancellor Rachel Reeves after she cried in the Commons? I'll also be speaking to the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, Mel Stride. What do the Conservatives make of the watered-down welfare bill and what impact it might have on the economy? He's written to the OBR. Are we asking him why? Rosie Duffield, the MP for Canterbury, will be here to reflect on what the future might have in store for the Labour Party, with Jeremy Corbyn, of all people, back in the fray. As the Chancellor refuses to rule out tax hikes in the autumn, I'm going to be speaking to the Senior Fellow at the Centre for Policy Studies and economist Gerard Lyons. What does it all mean for the money in your pocket? And the pollster Scarlett Maguire will be here to discuss the latest polling numbers. Can Reform win a majority? We've got another big show coming up, so do not even think of going anywhere. Let's get stuck into the Sunday papers, and with me to discuss them is the columnist and former founder of the... Well, you're not a former founder, you're the founder of Conservative Times. You no longer work there, you were a Tory and now you're a reformer. Tim Montgomery joins me in the studio. Lovely to see you, Tim.
It's great to be here.
Now, let's deal with this tricky story for Reform.
Yeah, it's not the best of news that we got yesterday. And I think, to be honest, this has probably now become Reform's #1 challenge. I don't want to particularly comment on the allegations against James.
Well, let's just quickly say what's happened.
Yeah. Well, James Murdoch is one of 5 Reform MPs and is accused, after a Sunday Times investigation, of taking bounce-back loans during the pandemic for companies that were seemingly dormant.
Right.
So there were a certain amount of thresholds you had to pass for levels of activity to qualify for these loans, and the allegation is that he wasn't, or the two firms involved weren't qualified.
And we'll expect him to robustly defend himself. He's turned around to Lee Anderson, who's the whip of the party, and said, I'm going to resign the whip while this is investigated. And I think Reform have said they are going to carry out their own internal investigation.
Exactly. And at the moment, Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, other leading members of Reform have said absolutely nothing about this at all. So we'll wait. They're perhaps doing a quick investigation themselves to establish the facts of the matter.
But the optics of it, Tim?
They're not good. And the very fact that James McMurdoch has decided to resign the whip suggests that, there may be some case to answer.
Yes.
And so this has become a repeated problem for the party I now support. They have these allegations against their MPs. It's been true of parties that Nigel Farage has led in the past.
Do you think they're kind of targeted more because they're Reform?
I think, well, for a start, there's only a few of them, so it makes it easier for journalists to target them. But also, the opinion polls that you've just been quoting at the top of the programme, Reform look like they could be the next government of the United Kingdom. So it's obvious that they're going to get more attention.
Yeah, they need to cope with the scrutiny as well.
They do need to cope with the scrutiny. But the one defence I would make was that James McMurdoch, for example, won a seat that he wasn't expected to win. Reform weren't expecting to win that seat. So there wasn't the due diligence on candidates that there is now in place. Before the last local elections, Reform put in place a more comprehensive vetting process than any party has ever done. And that will, of course, now apply to future candidates for Parliament. So this is a historical problem, is my hope. And then as Reform goes forward, because we now run councils, because we now have, hopefully, representation in Wales and Scotland building, we will have more of a reservoir, a known reservoir of talent with which to pick people. But, it's not obviously the story Reform would have wanted.
No. Well, let's move on to another story, and this is on the Sunday Telegraph's front page. Axe sickness benefits for foreigners, Tories urge. Now, my initial reaction to this story, Tim, I don't know what you think, is, sorry, are we paying benefits to foreigners?
I know.
I didn't realise that. And this presumably has happened under the Tories' watch. I will ask the Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride, why he's coming out with this now in opposition and not in power.
It's unbelievable, actually, isn't it, to think that we are a country that's already living beyond our means. We have a huge amount of borrowing now. We're spending over £100 billion every year now on just the interest on our debt as a country. So why are we paying benefits to foreigners? Disability benefits, when we already are going broke. And so Yeah, I'm very interested in you asking that question for Mel Stride.
But what are the Tories saying? That people who do not have UK citizenship should be barred?
Exactly, yeah. So there are other things that they want to introduce as well, including a face-to-face interview for everyone who wants a disability benefit.
Which is a good idea, because I was astounded by the figures since COVID on how many people actually have face-to-face appointments, and it's minimal. I think over 80% of all of these assessments are conducted remotely. Well, if you're claiming sickness benefits and you're claiming to have disabilities, surely you need to be seen in the flesh.
Absolutely, and I think it's probably cheaper immediately to do an interview over the internet rather than face-to-face. But if you save a little bit of money on the assessment process, but then you potentially have years of paying the people that you weigh through these benefits. So it's a short-term saving, which means a long-term cost for the taxpayer. So some good ideas from the Tories there, but I expect most people in the country would think, why aren't we doing these things already?
Yes, exactly. And also, is that going to cut through? I don't know. I mean, people might still blame the Tories for creating the benefits time bomb in the first place. Yeah. Right, let's get on to... It's interested in this. I actually went to an event hosted by the Free Speech Union in the Speaker Pub in Westminster quite recently about this proposed banter ban. Yeah. And in that case, Toby Young runs the organisation and he organised the event. It was about this idea that Angela Rayner with the Workers' Rights Bill wants to start policing banter in pubs. And if someone says something inappropriate, then somebody is going to be able to report them to the manager and they could get barred. And so this was all seen as very Orwellian. The Mail on Sunday have moved it on a notch. What are they saying then? That they also want to introduce a banter ban in the office?
Well, what seemingly to be at the heart of this story is that Angela Rayner wants to basically private firms to have diversity officers. Now, this is something...
Just what we need, more diversity officers.
Now, this, of course, anyone who works in the public sector, this is already something that they're familiar with, lots of diversity officers. But it's not good enough, apparently. We've got to have them in private firms as well. So private firms are already having extra taxes and regulations loaded upon them, and now we're going to have diversity officers as well. Now, of course, this is the opposite of the way America is going.
Yes.
Donald Trump is getting rid of diversity officers throughout the American state, and all these big corporations that we thought were very woke up until he came along are actually proving that basically they just copy what the state does.
Yes.
And they're getting rid of their diversity officers now because Trump has said, if you have diversity officers, we won't give you government contracts. And Britain is going in completely the opposite direction.
As is often the case.
And not in a good direction. And, of course, it's extra burdens for business. And we've already got extra taxes on businesses. So why anyone will employ people soon, I don't know.
I'm just looking at this now. So, for example, a worker could take an employer to tribunal if they feel jokes or banter they overhear are offensive on grounds such as race, sex and religion, if their bosses didn't do, quotes, all they could to prevent it. I mean, I appreciate that nobody wants to be hearing office banter that might be racist or sexist or whatever, but, like, where does the line get drawn? You come into the average newsroom in the UK, you are going to hear some quite fruity language, I'm going to be honest.
Fruity covers a lot of things there. And look, the reality, of course, Camilla, is that there are some people who are in firms, they never intend to really work very hard. They go in looking for cases like this.
Yes.
Not everyone is a good citizen. Not everyone is a good employee. They go into a firm and this will be exactly what they want now. They'll be complaining to the diversity officer within the company and it will be years. Employment tribunals now take years to go through. So this is just when businesses are already on their knees, struggling to cope with everything else, this is another burden from Labour. We know that none of them have run businesses, and it shows.
Socialism, innit? Right, moving on. A year of Labour in power, according to the Sunday Mirror, has gone very badly indeed. Let's look at this polling. It's Electoral Calculus and Find Out Now. They polled over 2,500 people in the UK. What's the worst stat from this, Tim? Let's have a look.
Well, there are lots of them in it. Of course, this is the Mirror.
I know this is the Mirror. That's why we picked it.
Yeah.
This is a good one, isn't it? Is Britain under Starmer on the right or wrong track? Right track, 8%.
Those are probably the people thinking on the right track are probably the train drivers.
Yes,
who've got extra money.
That's right. They're quite happy with it actually, and people working on HS2 and filling their boots. Wrong track, 55%.
Yeah,
it's not a ringing endorsement, is it?
So that's 6 times as many people think Britain is going in the wrong direction and the right direction. And honestly, this week has been one of the most momentous weeks I think I could remember in British politics.
What did you think of the scenes on Wednesday with the Chancellor crying in the Commons?
Well, look, on a human level, you have to have sympathy. She looked broken.
She did,
actually,
didn't she?
In the House of Commons.
It's actually really quite distressing to watch.
It was very distressing. I struggled to watch it, actually. And so on a human level, you've got to be concerned. But where were the people around her that said to her, you know, you don't get into that sort of state immediately you enter, you know, a reading like that. Actually, why didn't someone say, are you sure you should be going into the Commons?
And funny enough, that we didn't pick it out, but just quickly, because time is running out.
Yeah.
There is an interesting story in the Mail on Sunday saying the Tories warned Labour about Rachel's tears 17 minutes before PMQs. And this is what I heard.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah,
no.
so we were all kind of, you know, obviously trying to desperately find out what had gone wrong, who had she had a row with, if anyone, what was the background to all this. There was a suggestion she'd had a row with the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle. There had been words over Treasury questions the day before because the Speaker felt she was taking too long to answer the questions. Yeah. She was visibly frustrated by him in that session, rolled her eyes and said, right, I'll sit down. So there was that. But I heard from multiple sources that she went into the Commons crying, which begs the question, what had happened outside? Yeah. Had there been an incident behind the Speaker's chair? A row with Angela Rayner has been denied, although I've just interviewed Bridget Phillips and we're going to play it a little later on in the show. I did ask her about it all, Tim.
No, I look forward to hearing what they're saying. Now, I do have sympathy for Rachel Reeves, but I imagine a lot of people watching this now, if they're a farmer facing an inheritance tax dump on them that Rachel Reeves has imposed, or people who lost their winter fuel allowance because of her announcement last year.
Private school pupils who've been forced out by higher fees.
There's a long list of people that have been damaged
Businesses.
Absolutely. So there'll be a lot of people who think, well, Rachel Reeves has caused me to cry or nearly cry. So
no, indeed.
That's probably...
We've got literally about 30 seconds. Just one quick remark on the comrades. Corbyn's comrades. Are you worried by this as a reformer, Tim? Are they parking their tanks on your lawns?
Well, I think what we might be seeing in British politics, Camilla, is a collapse of the centre.
Yes.
I think people want radical change, whether that's radical from perhaps the right reform or radical from the left from Jeremy Corbyn. And it may well be beginning to see the demise of both the Conservative and Labour parties. Our political landscape might be about to change radically.
Are you saying Ed Davey might be the last man standing anywhere near the centre?
Oh, my goodness.
It's a worrying thought, isn't it? I'll be asking the pollster Scarlett Maguire about that a little later. Tim Montgomery, as ever, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. Well, as I said, I have got an interview with Bridget Philipson, the Education Secretary, coming up, along with Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor. But coming up next, I'm going to be speaking to Rosie Duffield, the former Labour MP who accused Keir Starmer of having a woman problem. I wonder what she makes of the Chancellor crying in the Commons on Wednesday. Don't go anywhere.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The fresh northwesterly winds that are currently across the UK are also beginning to spread into other areas of Western Europe and helping to ease the heat wave that they've had here recently. Still, though, there are plenty of heavy showers and thunderstorms here, particularly across parts of Iberia, the Alps and towards the Balkans. The heat, though, is getting squeezed towards eastern areas of continental Europe, and so here temperatures are still going to be notably above average as we head over the next few days, but with some sunshine.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain. So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. With me now is Rosie Duffield, the Member of Parliament for Canterbury, Whitstable and the Villages. Lovely to see you this morning. Look, let's start. Hello. Let's start with the Chancellor crying in the House of Commons on Wednesday. I'm asking you because you once made that comment when you left the Labour Party that, quotes, it was like leaving an abusive relationship and that the party and indeed the Prime Minister had a woman problem. Did we see that play out last week?
I think by his own admission, he failed completely to notice that Rachel Reeves was so distressed, which is quite extraordinary. But then when you're up against it at the dispatch box, perhaps that is possible. I guess he was concentrating on his answers. But surely if you work so closely with someone, you've got some idea of the fact that they might not actually be able to go into the chamber. And she was damned if she did, damned if she didn't. We all felt terrible watching that, I think. I don't know what it was that was going on with her, but she shouldn't have been there.
She shouldn't have been there, I think, even if she did have a personal problem in the background that obviously hasn't been commented on. And I was just saying to Tim Montgomery, who was reviewing the newspapers with me this morning, there's a story in the Mail on Sunday saying the Tories warned Labour about Rachel's tears 17 minutes before PMQs. So there was knowledge that she was very upset before she even stepped towards the front bench. What is it with Labour? I mean, when you said it had a women problem, and this has been something echoed actually by Louise Haigh after she got fired as Transport Secretary, what's going on? Is Number 10 too blokey? We obviously know historically they can't elect a female leader, but just speak to what the atmosphere might have been like last week for the Chancellor with so much criticism of her in the press.
I think, you know, women who get in the way or who get a bit awkward get briefed against, i.e. the people who are paid an awful lot of money, the unelected kind of lads. Now they're in Number 10 that were in the Leader of the Opposition's office and sort of dotted throughout those Labour networks. They're paid a lot of money and they brief against mostly women. If you look at since Starmer became Prime Minister, Sue Gray, Lou Haigh, Annalise Dodds, you know, all of the people leaving, Vicky Foxcroft, me, all women. I don't think that's a coincidence because, I mean, I've heard recently that some other Secretary of States have been briefed against, but the journalists haven't gone with those stories, mostly if they're political editors who are women. It's all part of the pattern. Women who are awkward get shunted out of the way or their lives get made to feel very uncomfortable.
That's interesting. The other one that springs to mind is the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy. She's also been the subject of rumours, and Bridget Phillipson, actually, who I interviewed earlier, and we're going to play it out a little later. You know, these people might be reshuffled out. not really
it's always
hearing
the
that
women.
about any of the men. No, it is always the
No.
women. That's an interesting observation. Do you know anything about these rumours of a row between the Chancellor and either Angela Rayner or the Prime Minister? Have you heard anything from your insiders?
Angela Rayner is obviously not in the same political sort of wing of the party as Rachel Reeves. I imagine they probably do clash over things like the spending on all of the houses and all the other projects that Angela Rayner is in charge of. But I don't personally know any of those rumours. It's a very tight-knit circle and I've never been part of that.
No, fair enough. What do you make of a year of Keir Starmer? We were just looking at some polling in the Mirror that makes for extremely uncomfortable reading. Is he on the right or wrong track? Only 8% think he's on the right track, 55% say wrong. His approval rating is now below that, let me stress that, below that of Gordon Brown.
It's an absolute disaster, Camilla. They have these expensive lads that I've just talked about who will spin things, in other words, make up stuff to say, you know, it's not that bad, he's doing a good job. Certain loyal MPs will repeat that, but nobody believes that. The public aren't stupid. Voters have been let down. It's not what they voted for. If you vote Labour, you expect a Labour government, and that's not what we've seen from day one.
But do you think that the rot has set in now? Can they recover from this? Because we've got a lot of time, haven't we, until the next general election. We're all behaving as if there's going to be an election next week. There won't be. It'll be 3 to 4 years from now.
That's really true. And you know, having been a reporter on this, you know, in politics for a long time, that is a huge amount of time in politics. That's saying a week is a long time in politics is really true. And we were all ready to give up on Starmer after the Hartlepool by-election some 4 years ago. And he did manage to turn it around. But I'm not sure how strong that turnaround was. I think that was the Tories imploding. So if he's come from that base, there's not a lot to build on. If you don't build your foundations and your convincing story within the first year, you're standing on shifting sand. There's no progress to be made if you can't even get to the first solid step of showing the country what your story is, what you stand for. So I think there might be a few shallow gains and some positive news in the next 3 or 4 years, but the foundations are rotten, and I don't think they can come back from this.
So do you think it's more a case that they haven't got a vision that they can spell out to the country? That's been the damaging thing, rather than the U-turns? I suppose the U-turns haven't helped, Rosie.
But it's all of it. He's not a convincing leader, not only to the public, but to his own MPs, never has been. There's no vision, there's no inspiration. Look at all the people, the groups of people that have been let down, you know, OAPs, farmers, all the people that we constantly talk about, and as MPs will be told by those groups we're never voting Labour again. So all of they've let down that voter base. Working people are turning away from Labour. So I think there's so many things that have gone wrong that Keir, I would bet, cannot lead Labour into the next election.
Wow, that's quite the statement. Who would be able to convince you to return to Labour if they were leader?
At the moment, I'm not sure I could be convinced. There's always rumours that Wes Streeting is sort of between Wes Streeting and Angie Rayner, and I guess they're two different wings of the party. Maybe someone else will come down the middle, who knows? I think the public could go with Wes Streeting. Labour members and activists and union people would go with Angie Rayner. She's very popular with members. So I think it's a question of who they're trying to galvanise, and they'll need the troops on the ground to deliver leaflets and to get through to the next election. Wes Streeting's got a very small majority at the moment, so he's got to work in his own patch. I don't think whoever takes over is going to lead the Labour Party to victory in the next election, though, I'm afraid. I don't want that to be true, but I think Labour are finished for a while.
Also, we now have Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana in their own party, and apparently Wes Streeting is one of their targets. They're very much hoping they can unseat centrist MPs, if you can call Wes Streeting that, from his seat in Ilford North and others. How worried should Labour be about this Corbyn redux, this Corbyn revival?
I think quite worried, because I now sit on the naughty benches, as we call it, with some of those independents and Jeremy Corbyn. They're gaining popularity, and as Tim McGorry was just saying, the way that we vote as a country is splintering now. It's not just the two main parties dominating everything. I think people are looking at issues, and that's why those independent MPs did so well. And yes, Wes Streeting's seat is a typical threatened one by those independents, because Gaza is a big issue there.
A quick word on the Supreme Court ruling, because I've not had a chance to speak to you since that momentous day. And there are concerns that a number of key institutions, including the Department for Education, still haven't come up with guidance, in that case for schools and children who are identifying as a different gender. What's happening here? Do we think that there is some roadblocks being put up by the blob, Rosie?
I suspect that civil servants are all over the place on this. We've seen lots of institutions not willing to accept the Supreme Court judgment. It's been a real problem. And MPs are still fighting against the Supreme Court judgment. Those MPs clearly don't understand that the majority of the public are with that Supreme Court judgment and are just basically about common sense. Not unkindness, not unfairness, but common sense and biological reality. And I think those institutions like the DfE, head teachers have been waiting for guidance since the last government. They need to get on with it, really.
All right, Rosie Duffield, we need to leave it there, but thank you very much, as ever, for your time and your candour this morning. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, thanks. Still lots more to come on the Camilla Tominey Show today. We're going to be speaking to the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson. I say going to be speaking. I've spoken to her. The interview is good. You must stay tuned for that. Also going to be speaking to the Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride. I'm going to be speaking to the top economist, Gerard Lyons, to find out the state of our economy and whether we think that taxes will rise in the autumn. Looks inevitable to me. And I'm going to be speaking to the pollster, Scarlett Maguire. She's got some very good numbers on the number of Labour voters at the last general election switching to Reform, and I'm going to ask her whether Reform can actually form a majority at this stage. So loads to come in the next hour. We'll be back in just a jiffy.
Imagine having an extra £1,000 to spend each week for an entire year. £54,321 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to spend however you like. £54,321 in cash could be landing in your bank account this year. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
You have to tackle gross levels of inequality. Now, this is not about being... it's not about fairness or the politics of envy. It's about saying we need more money in average people's pockets so they can go out and spend. What's happening is a lot of people are spending all the money on rents and mortgages.
Rich people and give it to poorer people.
Yeah, but obviously, when I say rich, who do you imagine?
No, well, I don't know, because I'm not proposing it. You tell me.
So for me, I'm not talking about those who've done quite well, those who've grown their businesses. I'm talking about the billionaire class and the corporations. Oh. And I don't want to look at increasing income taxes necessarily. It should be about a wealth tax, because if we don't do anything about it, it's going to get worse. Now, what's interesting what you said about benefits, I know there's this pervasive idea. I just want to make that point quickly.
Finish this point. She's about to spontaneously combust, but hang on. Go on, finish your point.
There is this pervasive idea that, well, we need to cut benefits to force people into work. And you can understand the logic there. It makes sense, right? What's interesting is in Denmark, they have a higher labour rate of participation, which a fancy phrase of more working age people are in work than the UK. In 2022, it was like 80%, 2024, 75%. Look at the UK, only 53% of people in work, yet Denmark have a far higher or far generous welfare state.
Well, we've had a lot of cheap labour that has come in, that's taken the levels of earnings down at times, and that's left...
I disagree with that.
Well, just let me finish. And that's left a lot of people who already live here, basically lounging on the sofa and thinking, well, my benefits are great, why should I get out of bed? Why should I get out of bed for another 20 quid a week? And we've got to get rid of that mentality, because it's the same people...
You're using anecdotes here. You're not looking at the facts.
I've told you the facts. Who seem to be contributing to this economy year in and year out, and a lot of them are actually older.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning and welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show here on GB News. Lots more still to come today. The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, will join me as we reflect on 1 year of the Labour government. I'll also ask her about the impact of the VAT raid on private schools. Many schools closing. Let's hear what she's got to say in response. I'll also be speaking to Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride. Did he reach out to his counterpart Rachel Reeves after the commotion in the Commons this week? The economist and senior fellow at the Centre for Policy Studies, Gerard Lyons, will be reacting to the Chancellor refusing to rule out tax hikes in the autumn. And Scarlett Maguire will give us a state of play from the polls as another new party emerges in British politics. Sexy Jezza, he's back. But first of all, I'm going to be joined by Mel Stride, who's coming in just a moment. Shadow Chancellor of Exchequer, Mel Stride. You should be hearing me now. Lovely to see you this morning. Thank you, as ever, for coming on the show. Have you reached out to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, since she was crying in the Commons on Wednesday?
Yes, I did. It was deeply distressing to have witnessed it, and of course I wasn't that far away, just opposite the table of the House there. Yes, so I messaged her shortly after PMQs, basically to say that I felt for her, and I hope that she was okay.
And there's a report in the Mail on Sunday this morning suggesting that the Tories warned Labour about Rachel's tears 17 minutes before PMQs. So did you see that, Mr. Stride? Did you see that she was distressed quite a long time before anyone else picked up on that?
No, I didn't, Camilla. In fact, the first I became aware of the situation was when Rachel came in and sat down, and then it was immediately apparent that everything was not really right. And as I say, really quite upsetting to see it, really.
It's very upsetting. And she's obviously cited personal reasons. But it is significant for the country, isn't it? If a Chancellor is seen to be in distress in public, it has implications for the markets. They didn't react well to what they were seeing. We then have resignation rumours flying around. Can we be honest here? Can we cut to the chase and say that perhaps this woman who did embellish her CV simply isn't up to the job?
Well, I think I don't want to sort of personalise this around what happened at Prime Minister's questions, which we are told that there was a personal reason why Rachel was very distressed, and I think we should just respect that. But stepping away from that situation, of course, absolutely terrible mistakes have been made with our economy, not just by this Chancellor, but also by the Prime Minister, in terms of being a government that came in saying they weren't going to put up everybody's taxes, then clobbering businesses and destroying growth. They then have gone out and borrowed vast amounts of money, stoked up inflation, so we've got interest rates higher for longer, which is hitting people and businesses up and down the country. And of course, overall, mismanaging the economy by destroying the so-called fiscal headroom that the Chancellor has against her targets, which is going to mean, I'm afraid, increased taxes in the autumn, which are going to be really difficult for a lot of people who are already struggling because of the choices taken by this Chancellor.
Well, this is what I can't quite understand. You've written to the Office for Budget Responsibility saying, goodness me, we need clarification of Britain's finances. We need new forecasts. I can see, Mel, that you're competing there with a team of children walking into the BBC. So bear with me. You've written to the OBR. We've got the Chancellor in tears on Wednesday, which rocks the financial markets. At some point or other, and Robert Jenrick has said this, he said she needs to consider her position. I can't quite understand why you won't say that. You're clearly concerned about the Chancellor's policies. You're concerned about the negative impact of the autumn budget. You've written this letter to the OBR saying, my God, the state of our finances are appalling. And yet, whenever I ask you, should the Chancellor consider her position, you play Mr. Nice Guy. She needs to consider her position, doesn't she? Because Britain's economy is tanking, according to the Tories.
Well, Camilla, look, they should all go, OK? And if Rachel goes, the Prime Minister should definitely go. We've had far too long over the last year of broken promises, You know, a government that said, for example, they wouldn't tax our farmers and then came in and did exactly that. They said they wouldn't means test the winter fuel payments for pensioners, then they did exactly that. They said they wouldn't put up our taxes left, right and centre, including national insurance, and they did exactly that. And we've now seen a government that is so chaotic, it's almost U-turning by the minute. U-turning on the winter fuel payment, U-turning on our pressure for them to have a national inquiry into grooming gangs, U-turning under pressure from their own backbenchers just last week on welfare, which is leading to this growing black hole of unfunded commitments. Okay, there's about £7 billion of those lying around, and that's why I wrote to the OBR. What this government said was they would not get into the business of unfunded commitments, and we don't know what the figures are now going to be looking like, and yet we're taking big decisions in Parliament.
So when you say they should all go, you're saying that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor should consider their positions and resign?
I think the whole front bench is taking our country in entirely the wrong
should they
direction.
resign?
I believe that the Prime Minister is. So, look, I think they should all go, right? I don't want to see a Labour government. I don't know why we keep playing these word games and all this.
Well, no,
Camilla,
you're
at the
playing
end of the
word
day,
games.
they should,
you want them to be voted out, or you want them to resign?
No, I'm saying that I think, given your question to me was, do you think they should stay in place? I think the whole lot of them are not fit for purpose. It's quite obvious that the way that the economy is being mismanaged at the moment is hitting people right up and down our country, and I'm afraid it's possibly going to get even worse in the autumn. So, that's not a record that would substantiate most people staying in their roles. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let's move on to a story on the front page of the Sunday Telegraph. Axe sickness benefits for foreigners, Tories urge. Many people watching and listening to this Maelstride might wonder why on earth foreigners can claim disability benefits and why the Tories allowed that to happen, presumably for the last 14 years.
So what we're putting forward, Camilla, is an amendment to the welfare bill, such as it is, because it's been largely gutted by this government, but what remains of it, to basically say that the government should come forward with a discussion document to look at this whole area, because we do believe that British citizenship should mean something, and when it comes to welfare, we know that the costs are ever spiralling upwards, and we need to get that under control, and that's a big dividing line between ourselves and Labour, and indeed between ourselves and Reform, who want to spend more, for example, by removing the two-child benefit cap. So we believe there should be a serious discussion about this in terms of arresting the size of the welfare bill.
But why on earth did the Tories allow people who aren't UK citizens to claim benefits of up to £1,200 a month? Why on earth didn't you do something about it when you were actually in power?
So what we did do, and I was Secretary of State at Work and Pensions for the last 18 months of the last government, was to bring in some very fundamental reforms around the work capability assessment. That's the gateway into these long-term sickness and disability benefits. And the OBR actually scored those reforms as meaning £5 billion worth of savings and seeing 450,000 fewer people going on to those benefits and actually then instead heading in towards the world of work. And we had, just if I could finish, we had very detailed plans, particularly around personal independence payments that we'd already consulted on, and then the general election interrupted that process, and all of these kind of other issues, which we would have brought forward had we been elected, to make very substantial savings. In our manifesto, we had a further £12 billion of savings per year. So that was the clear direction of travel, backed up by the fact that we'd actually proved that we could make very significant savings in welfare.
But you didn't ever say, while in office, that you should stop foreigners from claiming sickness benefits, did you?
So there is a moment in time at which all sorts of policies come forward. We are under new leadership under Camilla Badenoch. This is, I think, a very important area that we should be looking at. But Camilla, that shouldn't detract from the very important things that firstly we did when we were in office to grip welfare, and secondly the very clear plans, fully funded, fully costed plans
I know
we
you
had
did
for
things
going much further. And
I know you did things to grip welfare, and I think we should give Ian Duncan Smith credit for reducing that welfare bill by 31 billion. But let me ask you this, Mel Stride. How much would you reduce the welfare bill by now? Because Jeremy Hunt, of all people, is saying, let's shave 50 billion off it. How much would you shave off it? Give me a figure now.
Yeah, so we are going through a policy development process that will take some time. At the time of the next election, we will have absolutely clear proposals as to exactly what we're going to do. We don't know what the world's going to look like in 4 years' time. But what I am saying is that we have a track record of getting on top of welfare spending and making savings, and that was 5 billion when I was Secretary of State, and about 500,000 people, fewer people going on to those benefits as confirmed by the OBR, and we went into the last election with further savings of 12 billion a year. And yes, there is indeed more work and more thinking to be done on the issue of foreign nationals. We think it's important that British citizenship means something. We think it's important that we get on top of welfare bills around that particular issue, and our amendment is calling on the government to come forward with a discussion document so that we can go into that area of policy in greater detail, because we need to get on top of the welfare bill in a way that this government has basically given up on, and in a way that Reform is prepared to spend even more on welfare when you look at things like the two-child cap, and we don't think that's right. We think work matters, Camilla, more than just being on benefits. It's getting people into work that matters.
Work matters. We're both working on a Sunday morning, and I'm grateful as ever for your contribution, Mel Stride. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. All right, coming up next, somebody else who's working on a Sunday morning is the Secretary of State for Education, Bridget Phillipson. I spoke to her earlier. We're going to be listening to that interview next, and do stay tuned for it because it gets a little personal at one point or another when I reveal how I educate my own 3 children. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News. Earlier this morning, I spoke to the Secretary of State for Education, Bridget Phillipson. The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, joins me now. Lovely to see you this morning. Thank you so much for coming in. Have you spoken to the Chancellor since Wednesday? How is she?
Yes, we've been in touch. She's great. I mean, Rachel's made a tough stuff and she's just focused on getting on and doing her job.
So we've heard from multiple sources that she may have had a row, as well as with the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, with Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister. Her team is denying that. But what is going on inside the Labour Party that a senior female figure is in tears in the Commons?
Look, I wouldn't really know anything about that other than what Rachel has said is that she was dealing with a personal matter that morning. I think we can all understand that, you know, as politicians, we do have, you know, personal challenges we sometimes have to grapple with. And, you know, Rachel was back out there the next day launching the NHS 10-year plan with Wes Streeting and the Prime Minister. So, you know, she's a tough cookie and she's doing fine.
OK. You have big spending plans in your own department. We've got this announcement of the kind of rebooting of Sure Start. That's going to cost £500 million. I believe that's already being taken from the education budget as it stands. But we've now had this U-turn on welfare following the U-turn on winter fuel. That now means that the Chancellor isn't going to have several billion that she thought she'd have for spending plans, including on schools. So does that mean that tax rises are inevitable now come autumn?
I think we all knew that the public finances were in a tight position. That was what we inherited from the Conservatives. But at the spending review, we made different choices about what we were going to invest in. And that's why today I'm able to announce revitalised local family support services with new Best Start family hubs that will provide an enormous boost to families. And where it comes to future decisions in the budget, you know, those are matters for the Chancellor. It is important that the numbers add up, that we adhere to our fiscal rules, and we've got a clear plan for making sure the country continues to see economic growth.
But it sounds like you're not ruling out tax rises.
Well, these are not decisions for me as Education Secretary. They're matters for the Chancellor. This will all be taken together in the budget. But what is critical, and what we've always been clear about, is that getting economic growth is absolutely essential, because if we grow our economy, we're in a much stronger position where it comes to our ability to invest.
When it comes to the number of teachers in schools, now we remember the pledge at the very beginning of Labour's term in office, where you said that we were having to accept the VAT increase, the VAT being applied to private school fees, to fund 6,500 teachers. Schools Week has reported that actually these aren't new teachers. Some of them are already in post, and that primary teachers have been left out of these numbers. So can you tell me now, how many actual new teachers are being recruited as a result of the VAT hike?
So we are seeing big progress. We've got almost 2,300 more teachers in secondary, in FE and in the specialist sector. We're focusing our efforts there because that's where we see the biggest growth. Where it comes to primary, we know that because of the falling birth rate, we will sadly in the years to come just need fewer primary school teachers. That's the sad reality of where we are at the moment. But we are increasing the number of teachers. We're also seeing more teachers staying in the profession. So we're seeing really positive green shoots as we move towards our target of 6,500 teachers, as you say.
When will that 6,500 be met? Because it was in the manifesto and some of the language changed around it being new. So when are we getting the 6,500 teachers?
So that's over the course of the Parliament.
Right. But then Schools Week has also reported that if you take all teachers on board, and I note that you didn't mention primary school teachers when you listed the number of new teachers that we have, actually we've got 400 fewer teachers across the board now than we had last June. So actually the number of teacher numbers have gone down under Labour, despite a promise for them to go up by 6,500.
They're going up where we need them, which is in secondary, specialist and FE. Sadly, we do and will in the years to come need fewer primary school teachers because we've got fewer primary school children.
OK, this is the other confusing element to this. At the beginning, Labour said that you were putting VAT on private school fees to fund teachers. We then had a series of tweets from Keir Starmer suggesting that that money is actually funding affordable housing. What is the money that the VAT hike has produced going on? Is it going on teachers or is it going on loads of other Labour policies?
So the amount of money that will be raised by the end of the Parliament is around £1.8 billion in terms of private school, the VAT on private schools. Through the spending review and actually through the budget, we're already investing more beyond that. When you raise tax, of course, that money then goes into the Treasury and decisions are taken about how the money is spent. But through the spending review, we're investing now more in schools, in colleges, also in rebuilding more schools, and alongside that, expanding free school meals eligibility to more children, the biggest expansion in a generation, which actually far outstrips anything we're going to raise through private school fees. But I do think it was the right decision to raise money to reinvest in state education, and that is precisely what we're doing, alongside investing more, for example, in social and affordable housing. These are all decisions that have been taken through the spending review and demonstrate our determination to build a better and fairer country.
OK, but then you say better and fairer. The VAT on private school fees has adversely affected private school pupils, hasn't it? We've now got school closures up 67%. 18 private schools closed in 2024. Today, as of today, it's 31. And that's apparently affected twice as many SEN, special needs children. So was it worth it to see schools closed down as Education Secretary?
So the number of private schools now is higher than it was last year. So we've actually got more private schools than last year. That's the figures that we have. What I would say, I mean, we discussed...
How can we have more than last year if 31 have closed? How many have opened?
There's more opening.
How many have opened in comparison to 31 closing?
I'd need to look at the exact number, but I know that from the numbers I've reviewed, the numbers of private schools are higher now than they were last year.
But in general, are you happy with schools closing?
Private schools open and close all the time. That's what's happened over decades. That's not a new phenomenon. What I'm determined to do is to make sure that we do invest more in state education. Now, I'm always happy to answer any questions that you have on this or any other topic, and I'll answer them as directly as I can. But I do have to say, we've got around this quite a few times in the past when I've been on your show. Good to be with you again today. But actually, the vast majority of the people watching this will be sending their kids to state schools.
Yes.
And what they want to know is how we're improving standards in our state schools and delivering more teachers as we are into our state schools.
For clarification, I've got a foot in both camps because I send a child to state school and I send two children to private school. So I can see it from both sides of the coin. And the problem with people who have got their children in state schools, particularly in oversubscribed areas like mine, I live in Hertfordshire, is that they are affected because if private school children can't afford to go to their schools, they then apply to go to state schools. The state schools are then oversubscribed. So it does have an impact. There has been an exodus of private school children, so it is relevant to the state sector. But just in general, as an education secretary, how can you be happy with a situation where 31 schools have been closed down and presumably teachers have lost their jobs? You can't be happy with that scenario.
And private schools are private businesses. They make decisions about their funding model, about who they appeal to. But actually, as I say, we've got more private schools this year than we did last. What I'd also add, when you talk about movement of students between different parts of the sector, on the secondary school offer day this year, so when parents are offered their place at a secondary school, we actually saw an increase in the number of first choice offers. So the kind of the scaremongering, the talk that we apparently had about this would have a terrible and devastating effect, I'm afraid just isn't coming to pass.
All right. When we move on to you discussing the idea of the low birth rate, I think you said that earlier with regard to primary school teachers, and you're saying that you now want more people to have more children. Aren't you just channeling your inner Nigel Farage there? I mean, previously we've heard Labour politicians sort of try and push back on the Tories talking about family taxes or incentives to have a family, a kind of 2.4 children scenario. You've often said, oh no, that stigmatises single parents. Now you're advocating families and fathers.
No, I've always been really open in talking about, including from opposition, and talking about how Labour is the party of the family. But I believe that families come in different shapes and sizes. I was brought up in a single-parent family. That was a loving and supportive home, and that's as much of a family as a married couple as I am with children now. But I do think there is a good and strong Labour and left-wing argument for how, people are making choices at the moment about family shape and about how many children they can have that are often rooted in decisions beyond their control. So some of those pressures that families are facing about the cost of living or housing. But I would also say just how lots of people, particularly young people, tell me they worry about becoming a parent because they think it's just too hard, that the support isn't available. So what I'm announcing today around more family support services through Best Start Family Hubs is about making sure that all parents, regardless of income or background, get the support they need around becoming a parent. It is a huge life-changing, wonderful life-changing event. But often in those early months and years, parents can find it hard, isolating, and having access to, to other parents, to family support services, to health services, that is all critical in how we just make parenting easier in this country. And that's what I'm talking about today.
Do you worry about fatherlessness? It was identified as a factor in particularly white working class boys falling behind in class by a report by the Centre for Social Justice called Lost Boys recently.
I want to make sure that all boys and young men have got really strong, good role models in their lives. Now, often that can come in the shape of a father, but sometimes it can be granddads, uncles, or actually role models within school as well. And that's why I really want to see more men working in primary schools and early years education so that our boys do have really fantastic role models to look up to and to aspire to be. And part of what I'm going to be setting out tomorrow through our Best Start in Life strategy is how we really improve early years education. And I think, making sure we've got more men working in early years and in primary schools is an important part of that, and supporting families of all shapes and sizes to thrive.
Final quick question. How worried are you about Jeremy Corbyn's new party with Zara Sultana?
They can do as they choose. We're just focused on actually getting on and making life better for people in this country.
Don't think they're going to steal votes from Labour?
Well, it's not got off to the best of start so far for them, but that's for them. They can do as they choose. We're focused on the future, on delivering for working people across our country.
Bridget Phillipson, thank you very much for joining me in the studio this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you know what? I'll say this of the Education Secretary. She's always willing to come in and make the argument. She insists she comes into the studio, unlike others in Labour. She actually engages with GBNews, unlike the Prime Minister when it comes to my show, at least. I know he speaks to Chopper, Angela Rayner, the Deputy, and indeed the Chancellor Rachel Reeves. So maybe they should take a leaf out of Bridget Phillipson's book. Nothing to be afraid of, just some straight questions that require straight answers. Right, coming up next, I'm going to be speaking to the economist Gerard Lyons about whether tax rises do seem inevitable in the autumn, and also just the state of Britain's finances in general. Stay tuned for that.
Hello there, a very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. It is quite a muggy start out there for this second half of the weekend. A reasonable amount of cloud around as well, all being driven in by this area of low pressure. A few fronts to watch out for, particularly this one we've got our eyes on, could provide some quite intense bursts of rain first thing this morning around the Humber and the Wash. It will tend to break up into more scattered showers as it drifts southeastwards, and some of those could turn thundery with some hail around at times as well, so it's worth taking care across those eastern areas of England. A scattering of showers coming in elsewhere, being brought in by a brisk northwesterly wind, and so it is going to make it feel quite cool out there for some of us, particularly across parts of Scotland where temperatures will be climbing around 15-16 degrees Celsius. But the sunshine should hopefully start breaking through a touch more here into the afternoon. Again, potential for some brighter spells arriving into Northern Ireland later on, but the bulk of England and Wales are likely to hold on to a good amount of cloud as we head throughout much of Sunday. But a touch more warmth here will allow those temperatures to peak around 24 degrees Celsius in the southeast. We'll start to see more on those showers drifting their way southwards, so some further pulses of rain pushing in across England and Wales throughout the evening and overnight. Otherwise, some clear spells developing, and with that northwesterly wind filtering in some fresher conditions, tonight should hopefully be a touch more comfortable for sleeping. Many of us seeing temperatures drop down to 10 to 14 degrees Celsius. Some early rain to contend with then across areas in the south, but that will eventually clear its way off. Some scattered showers just pushing in across North Sea coastal regions and well for the far northwest of Scotland. But for Wales, western areas of England will hopefully see the sunshine breaking in a lot more as we head into the afternoon. It should dry up quite nicely. If you manage to see that sunshine, temperatures not too bad, 20-23 degrees Celsius, but it is still going to be a breezy day out there, and that will certainly affect the feel of things if you're caught in it. The sunshine, though, should turn more widespread for many of us, and temperatures are set to climb. Enjoy your day.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Joining me now is the economist and senior fellow at the Centre for Policy Studies, Gerard Lyons. Lovely to see you this morning, Gerard.
Good morning. Great to be on the show. Thank you.
What did you make of the Chancellor crying in the Commons? It had a bit of an impact on the markets at the time.
Well, the markets were focusing more on the fact that if the Chancellor was replaced, what would this mean for economic policy? And the markets at that time were focused less on the personal issues, as important as they were, and what this might imply about what's going on behind the scenes. Obviously, since the market reacted, more information has come to the fore. But nonetheless, the underlying issue is this, that the economy is stumbling through. It's growing at a modest pace, but it looks very vulnerable. There's very little fiscal headroom based on the Chancellor's forecasts. And the Chancellor in the last few weeks, or indeed the government in the last few weeks, has seen two of its recent policy announcements reversed. And the markets were focused on the fact that both of those policy announcements will mean that there's a gap in the fiscal numbers, the reversal of the winter fuel allowance and also the capping of welfare spending didn't go through as intended. So the markets during the week were thinking the Chancellor is the one who's trying to keep the fiscal numbers in check. And if she were replaced, does that mean that the fiscal numbers become looser? So what we have anyway now is clearly the Chancellor is there. The Chancellor has a very difficult situation between now and the budget. At the very least, it looks like there will be some tweaking of the fiscal numbers with tax increases. But the possibility is that there are so many moving parts, the fiscal situation could require even greater tax increases than is currently being talked about.
You see, this is what confuses me, Gerard. We've got a Chancellor talking about how she's sticking to her fiscal rules.
Yeah.
And yet, when it comes to government spending, I mean, they're not willing to spend that. They're not willing to go ahead with the welfare cuts that they wanted. So they haven't got that $5 billion. I think the bill has reduced the amount of savings down to $1 billion or less. She's got this fragile fiscal headroom, and also they have borrowed. I think this figure is right. $55 billion in 8 months. So there isn't much fiscal discipline.
Right. There are a number of issues here. Let's take two key issues. One is the actual whole fiscal area in the UK in terms of how we go about fiscal policy. Every 5 years, there's an external review of the fiscal situation in the UK of the OBR. And the latest 5-year review came out earlier this year, carried out by experts from the Netherlands. I was one of the outside experts who contributed to it. And it concluded that the UK has a very back to front, effectively, approach to fiscal policy. It's very obsessed by the fiscal headroom. And in turn, therefore, what the OBR says about economic numbers it forces the government into policy actions. So it implied that that approach should change. It hasn't. We're with it. And as we approach the autumn budget, the reality is that the fiscal headroom is very small. The economy is not growing particularly strongly. The OBR is likely to revise down its growth forecast for next year. Also, this coming week, the OBR is actually going to be making a major announcement about the medium-term outlook. So all of this compounds the pressure on the Chancellor. And the second big issue then is what are the choices available to the government? And it comes down to 5 areas: grow, reform, austerity, tax, borrow. Ideally, we want the economy to grow. It's not growing strongly enough. Ideally, we want to see reform of public sector and productivity. That's happening, but it takes time to feed through. So it comes down to austerity, tax or borrow. The last couple of weeks have shown clearly that even trimming the public sector numbers is difficult. We do have health spending going up, but by not as much as in previous years. Therefore, there is austerity in many public sector areas, but it's unlikely we will see public spending squeezed further in the budget. So therefore, the markets are saying it comes down to either tax or borrow. We're already borrowing over £300 billion this year. That was tweaked up a couple of months ago. The markets are finding it difficult to digest that. If borrowing yields go up in the States, unfortunately, that has a correlation and an impact on us in the UK. So the borrowing room for manoeuvre is limited, so it comes down to taxes. Now, to meet the fiscal headroom, personal allowances later in this Parliament are likely to not rise in line with inflation. Whether it's other tax increases on top of that remains to be seen.
But it's going to have to be, isn't it, Gerard? I mean, I'm just trying to kind of rack my brains for where they can take more money when you consider that the tax burden is already at a historic high. I know there are some on the hard left who are saying we're not taxed enough, unbelievably, but we've got talk now about the taxing of pensions. We're going to have those thresholds continue to be frozen, I would imagine, fiscally dragging more people into higher tax rate bands. We've got Neil Kinnock this morning talking about wealth taxes, although I think the Chancellor's ruled them out. So what kind of taxes do you think will go up? Because she's kind of made her bed when it comes to not taxing working people, even though she once described a national insurance hike as a jobs tax.
OK, before we start to announce or say what's going to happen in the budget, let's remember also it's possible that the economy might actually do better than expected. I think it's unlikely, but the economy is sort of stumbling through. It grew 0.7% in the first quarter, then it fell in April. During the last week, we saw that the service sector is doing very well on the Purchasing Managers Index. Unfortunately, manufacturing is not doing very well. I think, unfortunately, the situation is going to deteriorate because the jobs market is turning. And that's largely a consequence of the tax increases from last autumn. And I think the biggest danger is we have a repeat of the second half of last year. If you remember, Labour won in July last year, didn't have an immediate budget. Normally, governments have a budget within 3 or 4 weeks. They decided to wait for 10 weeks. They talked the economy down and confidence evaporated as people waited for this budget last autumn, expecting it to deliver bad news. I think the fear is that we could have a repeat of that. Now, hopefully the Chancellor will try and talk the economy up this summer, but the danger is the economy might be flatlining as we approach the budget. And there are lots of moving parts. If the economic numbers turn out to be worse, and if the OBR thinks that the productivity outlook in the medium term is worse than they thought, then that means taxes have to go up. Against that, interest rates, which are 4.25%, are likely to fall, and they could fall far further, far more, if it looks likely that taxes will go higher. But in answer to your question, the Chancellor has ruled out any changes to the big 3 taxes. Personal allowances are likely to change. That, at the end of this Parliament, changing all personal allowances by 1% gets you about £1.8 billion. So it's significant, but it doesn't make enough of a headroom. Hence your comment, wealth taxes don't make any sense. I've looked at these in detail. Indeed, even that paper by Advani that advocates wealth taxes is its own biggest critic, in the sense that it argues that wealth taxes are not as good as raising current taxes such as inheritance tax or capital gains tax. So it's possible they could go down that route. But I think the point you came up with, about pensions, I think that will be back in centre stage as well.
Wow.
So once you basically have a difficult situation and you rule out changing any of the big three taxes, then in some respects you're tinkering at the edges. But the economy doesn't merit higher taxes later this year. Fiscal rules ideally should change. That's clearly not going to happen. And the markets are very wary about the fiscal numbers, not just later this year, but the medium-term trend as we move into the second half of this Parliament in particular.
All right, Gerard Lyons, thank you. You're not painting a particularly rosy picture there, but thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Worth noting as well, when we look at the state of the labour market, 277,000 fewer payroll employees now than there were last year. And to think that the Workers' Rights Bill hasn't even come into force yet. We shall be watching developments very closely here on GB News, as you can imagine. Well, let's have a look at some other numbers next, because we're going to be joined by Scarlett Maguire. She's got the latest polling numbers. Very interesting state of play for Reform, Labour, and of course, let's also try and find out what impact the revival of Jeremy Corbyn might have on the polls. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The fresh northwesterly winds that are currently across the UK are also beginning to spread into other areas of Western Europe and helping to ease the heat wave that they've had here recently. Still, though, there are plenty of heavy showers and thunderstorms here, particularly across parts of Iberia, the Alps and towards the Balkans. The heat, though, is getting squeezed towards eastern areas of continental Europe, and so here temperatures are still going to be notably above average as we head over the next few days, but with some sunshine.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
On this day, 4 years ago, GB News was born, launching our first live broadcast on June the 13th, 2021. Let's take a look back at some of our earlier memories.
If you've just switched on, a very warm welcome to you. I am Alistair Stewart, and until 3 p.m. this afternoon, I'll be keeping you company, along with friends and, I hope, friendly guests. I hope you'd agree that we've had a strong hour of debate and discussion so far, but there's lots more still to come. GB News is all about you, our viewers. Any burning questions or stories that you think we need to cover, no matter how big or small, we really do want to hear from you.
Well, we can now speak with former GB News presenter Alistair Stewart. Alistair, thank you so much for joining me. Thinking back to 4 years ago, what did you think the channel's prospects were? Did you think it would be a success?
I did. Thank you so much for having me on, and a very happy birthday to you, one of the many brilliant faces, as we call it in the trade, presenting programmes, but also to the absolutely wonderful team of technicians that you've got behind you, making sure that this all gets on air very smoothly. And we've not only hung on in there, but we've now got GB News Radio as well. Online, we're huge. We get quite good numbers on viewing, very, very good numbers on listening, well ahead some of the other competitors. I do remember when Murdoch launched Talk, there were quite a few people in the newsroom who were nervous, not because they were so good, but because Murdoch had so much more money than we did. We've seen them off. They're virtually dead in the water now, and we are thriving, celebrating 4 years of triumphal and brilliant journalism.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News. At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. We all love a bit of polling, don't we? And who better to discuss the state of the nation than founder and director of Merlin Strategy, Scarlett Maguire, who joins me in the studio. Now, I like this from your research. Labour are only holding on to 7 in 10 of their 2024 voters, with Reform the main beneficiaries. So 3 in 10 are going to Reform now. Although it's a marathon, not a sprint, this. Are we being a bit premature with all these numbers?
I do actually think that you're right to say that we can get a bit carried away with ourselves, especially thinking about, I know there was an MRP out today in the Sunday Times with seat projections. I think everyone can get a bit too excited, especially this far out from a general election. But what I do think it shows for Labour, so Labour are only holding on to 7 in 10 of their voters, as you say, and we actually have it slightly higher than other pollsters. Other pollsters show them bleeding more to different parties. And you're right, the main beneficiaries Reform, some are going to the Greens as well, some are going to Lib Dems, but Reform have the most. That is significant. And I think we also asked other questions as part of that survey, and we discovered things like 3 in 10 Labour voters regret their vote. Half of Labour voters think they're moving too slowly to deliver change. This is not a very good position for a government that won a big majority only a year ago.
Only a year ago? I mean, just give us an analysis of just how bad the year has been, because I made the point earlier that it's unbelievable in a way that his approval rating, Keir Starmer, is now lower than Gordon Brown's at the height of the global financial crisis. I mean, that is low. Who's been lower? Liz Truss?
Well, but Liz Truss didn't make it this far. So if any Prime Minister that has made it this far, especially a newly elected one, Keir Starmer has the worst on record. It's been about the last 50 years since pollsters have been gathering this sort of data. And again, it's quite a shocking indictment. For me, you're absolutely right to bring up Gordon Brown, and for me the most shocking one was actually comparison to Rishi Sunak, because if you think about when Rishi Sunak took control of the Conservative Party after the Liz Truss sort of debacle and what happened there, after Boris Johnson, after Partygate, after all of that chaos in the Conservative Party, and somehow Keir Starmer has still got worse approval ratings than Rishi a year in after 14 years of baggage, and I think that is quite extraordinary.
That is damning, isn't it? Right, just talk us through the maths. Now we have a kind of 4-party system. Is that magic number right, that Reform need 31.5% as a vote share to get a majority? Is that right?
It's how some pollsters have calculated. Our first-past-the-post system means it's very difficult to predict exactly how percentages will map out onto the percentages of seats won. One thing we do know is, however, and I think it's probably why Reform have gone quite quiet on electoral reform, which is something they used to talk a lot about, and
they
appreciate
don't want
it's quite very
proportional representation anymore. It's
exactly.
Funny that,
Well, exactly, because now, as we saw in the local elections, they are benefiting from the first-past-the-post system, and they won in the local elections. They won more seats than the percentage of the vote they got. And we're in a situation where if Labour start doing even worse than they are now, I mean, again, Labour polling in the mid-20s is truly shocking for the party, and that could lead... We saw that projection today, Labour were ending up with only 126 seats. That is so awful. That's so much worse than with Michael Foot in 1983 or with Jeremy Corbyn in 2019. That is astonishingly bad for the Labour Party. But the worse Labour do, the easier it becomes for Reform to sneak through on less of a share of vote.
We'll get on to Compo in just a minute. On the Tories, when people say they're finished, are they finished?
It's, you know, I think it's too early to say at this point. One thing you can say, though, is that to go backwards after your worst ever electoral defeat is not a very good place to be in.
No.
And if I was the Conservatives, yes, you know, we've seen that, and when you talk to Conservatives, they say, well, Reform might blow themselves up, and obviously we've seen a little bit more chaos from Reform over this weekend.
James McMurdoch
you know, you can never rule that out. But what I would say to that is that I don't think that necessarily still helps the Conservatives. The Conservatives have not fixed their brand at all, and they're, more importantly than that, they're not even cutting through with the public. The public aren't listening to them. They're not paying any attention to them. The Conservatives, I think, are going to have to show pretty dramatically that they've changed and they've got some energy back before they might be able to consider a revival.
Do we think this James McMurdoch story will cut through? I only ask because it's related to the pandemic and bounce-back loans. Let's be very careful here. An investigation has been carried out, but when it involves COVID, it's got shades of the Tories and the criticisms of them. I mean, I don't know how much these little problems with inside Reform, you know, be it the resignation of Rupert Lowe or the resignation and then revival of Zia Youssef, how much they actually affect people on the doorstep?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can say two things to that, which is, to your point, you know, on Rupert Lowe and on whatever happened with Zia Youssef, that didn't cut through. That hasn't hurt them. The Rupert Lowe especially, in fact, if anything, they seem to do slightly better after that happened, which is quite interesting. And the Zia Youssef, again, it didn't really cut through. But again, most of the public don't know who these people are. They don't know who Rupert Lowe is. They don't know who Zia Youssef is. Public awareness of any politician is always much lower than people think it is. So far, the public haven't noticed. I think you're right, though, to bring up the fact that it's COVID. And again, we don't know, you know, ongoing investigation, all the rest of it. But the fact that it's COVID fraud, that is a very bad subject, I think, to be associated with, because in every focus group I do, when people talk about a lack of trust in politicians, someone will normally bring up COVID frauds, and they'll associate it with the Tories for now. But if you're Reform, you don't want to be tarnished with that same brush.
How about the Lib Dems? Are we underestimating the Lib Dems? We're not talking about them, but they've got 71 seats. I mean, they could quite happily, if there is this split on the right and a split on the left now, we'll get onto Corbyn in just a minute, then a lot of people just might vote yellow, just not knowing which direction to go in. And we know that they've already outgunned the Tories in huge swathes of the blue wall.
Yeah, you're right. And we don't probably talk enough about the Lib Dems. And interestingly, the Lib Dems don't talk very much about themselves either.
True.
They are sort of slightly a sleeper party at the moment, aren't they, in Parliament with all those MPs? But no, Lib Dems will be benefiting from some of the same fed-upness with the two main parties that Reform are. And actually, I think people underestimate that, yes, Lib Dem does have a very core, you know, activist base. We're very good at getting the vote out, who do, you know, are very, very upset about the Brexit referendum still. And all those sorts of slight stereotypes about those sorts of Lib Dem voters are true of their base, but they also pick up lots of other people who are just fed up, who don't want to vote Labour or Conservative, or who want to give the governing party a kicking. And so actually, I think this environment is very good for the Lib Dems at the moment.
But it's interesting, isn't it, that as Labour have proved to be unpopular after their first year with actual Labour voters, that what you're saying is the swing is going to Reform, traditionally considered more right-wing, than, say, the Lib Dems or even the Greens. Like, so people aren't going more leftwards, they're just looking for new solutions. How, then, when we plant Jeremy Corbyn into the scene, might that affect things? Just talk us through that maths of in 2017 he got more votes.
Yeah, I mean, in 2017 it was astonishing. 2017, and again, think about the percentages we've been talking at the moment, with no party really polling above 30%, with Labour in the mid-20s, with the Conservatives below 20. In 2017, Jeremy Corbyn got 40% of the vote. Now, this was
that's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary, and it was a very different election. It was turned into a two-horse race, you know, just between him and Theresa May. Theresa May obviously had that horrific campaign. There were lots of other things going on there, but Corbyn got 40% of the vote in 2019. In 2017, in 2019, he only just underperformed Keir Starmer in terms of percentage of vote share that Keir Starmer got at the last election. And I think crucially, Jeremy Corbyn, much like Nigel Farage, has very high name recognition. So it's very hard to get a new party off the ground. Places like, you know, people like Change UK proved that, didn't they?
Yes. Where's Chuka-Ramuna now?
Well, exactly.
Who knows? Where's Anna Soubry? Who cares?
Right.
Carry on.
But they never had the same name recognition as Jeremy Corbyn. And what I'm quite interested in is the Greens have quietly been polling their best ever polling performance. They've been getting about 10% of the vote.
Greens?
Yeah, the Greens. And
Which is interesting. It's very more left-wing than Labour, aren't they, these days? They're aligned with some Islamist candidates, particularly in Leeds. There's a councillor there who has been associated with some poor behaviour towards a local rabbi, but carry on.
No, and there's a leadership candidate called Zach Polanski at the moment who is looking, I don't know whether he will win the leadership, but if he does, he's looking to move that party to a more Corbynite platform, explicitly Corbynite, left-wing populist, very similar to the sort of momentum we saw behind Corbyn in 2019 and 2017. And I wonder whether that is actually the future for whatever it is that Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana are planning, if this new leadership were to take place with the Greens. And if there was any way then for those people to start working together under the Greens banner, if I was Labour, I would then be incredibly worried.
Really? Yes, so Polanski would be more popular probably than Carla Denyer. He's got quite the following. Then you would need Labour to keep Ed Miliband in post to make sure that they're keeping their end up when it comes to the eco-wars. But yes, so the Greens, so that would be the most sensible thing for Corbyn to do. So you're saying that Corbyn and Sultana by themselves, and let's be honest, your Diane Abbotts, your John McDonnells, your Clive Lewises have said, no thanks, I'm staying in Labour. They joined forces with the Greens. Well, how dangerous would that be for Labour?
I think it'd be incredibly dangerous, and you have to remember it's not even just dangerous in terms of how many seats the Greens might end up, which still might not be very many, you know, it could still be a handful. But we've seen what can happen with a handful of MPs in terms of reform, in terms of how much they can then dictate the politics. It's more about how they can end up costing that ruling party seats, and I'd be very interested to see whether that sort of Green Party would be the sort of reform to the Conservatives in 2024, UKIP to the Conservatives in 2015, and exert a different sort of pressure.
In a way, the public have never had more choice.
Yeah, they have. That's absolutely right. And that's also why we're seeing a range of independent candidates coming through and local movements. I mean, I think local dynamics in each constituency has sort of never been more important, actually. And there are pluses and downsides to that, but it is certainly a very different sort of environment to the one we've been traditionally used to.
Good time to be a pollster.
It's quite nice.
Good time to be a journalist. Scarlett Maguire, thank you very much indeed for joining me on GB News. Now, coming up next, Angela Rippon, the brilliant Angela Rippon, is replacing Michael Portillo for the week. There she is. Angela, what have you got coming up?
Oh, the usual nice eclectic mix. Actually, following on from what you've been talking to Scarlett about, which is this sort of political cocktail that we've now got of more parties. I should be asking my panel about that, but also bearing in mind the lovely weather that we've got. We're going to look at how we can keep our gardens looking good. And a whole new book about Marilyn Monroe says, was she murdered? Well, I don't know. We might come up with an answer after I've spoken to the author of this book.
Fascinating stuff. Angela, thank you very much indeed. Well, that's me done for another week. Thank you to all of my guests. They've been brilliant. Really enjoyed the Bridget Phillipson interview in the studio. Do take note, Labour colleagues, you can come in and speak to me. So coming up next is Angela Rippon, the only woman on GB News that can still do the splits. I'll be back next week at 9:30 for more punchy politics. Have a great day.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, this is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. If you are heading to Wimbledon today, we could see some thundery showers around throughout the first parts of this afternoon, or because low pressure is in charge across the UK, providing a reasonably unsettled theme, and it's particularly this front pushing southeastwards across England that is already providing some quite heavy pulses of rain. And across southeastern areas of England, those could intensify into thunderstorms throughout the rest of today. Some hail, strong gusty winds around, so it is worth taking care. Despite that, we are holding on to a fair amount of humidity in the south as well, so temperatures here will manage to climb towards the mid-20s of degrees Celsius. There'll be lighter showers across Wales, southwestern England, 20-21 degrees Celsius possible here. Again, a lot of cloud around for northern England, but hopefully some brighter spells emerging for Northern Ireland, but more so across northern Scotland as we head throughout the day. But again, still the odd shower to watch out for. There is quite a brisk breeze around today, and that will grow stronger, particularly through the North Channel, affecting coastal regions here down across the Isle of Man during this evening, gusts of 40-45 miles an hour. But that breeze is also pushing all this cloud and rain further southward, so some further pulses of heavy rain possible across England and Wales during the forthcoming nights, but otherwise some clear spells developing, and it will be relatively fresh. Temperatures in towns and cities dropping back to 10-14 degrees Celsius, but might even see single figures in rural parts of Scotland. There'll be that heavy rain still lingering for parts of Wales, southern England first thing tomorrow, but it will eventually clear its way off, and certainly into the afternoon the sunshine should break through a bit more readily across many areas. A few showers always skirting around some coastal districts, but temperatures fairly around average for the time of year, 20-23 degrees Celsius, but we do hold on to that breeze, so it will feel cool if you're exposed to that. We are, though, likely to be seeing more sunshine as we head throughout the week, and that will come with rising temperatures, potentially 30 degrees Celsius. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Well, American writer Hal Borland once wrote that July is a blind date with summer. Well, on this very first Sunday of the month, I welcome you to our date this morning for the next 2 hours of arts, culture, current affairs and food here on Sunday with Michael Portillo, but for today with me, Angela Rippon. Now, do we really need more political parties in Britain? Well, this week, the MP for Coventry South, Zara Sultana, announced that she was leaving the Labour Party to set up a new political party with the former Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn. Well, my panel is going to debate the latest developments in British politics. With the scorching temperatures we've seen across the country this week, what should we be doing in our gardens? Well, horticulturalist Anthony Henn is going to join me live from his garden to share his best green-fingered tips. And I'm going to be speaking to the woman who was labelled the Angel of Mostar. She's Sally Becker, a remarkable humanitarian aid worker who's written a new book about her work, saving the lives of children who are caught up in conflicts. And as Wimbledon season is fully underway, the president of the Restaurant Association, Robert Walton MBE, is going to join me here in the studio to share some different picnic delights, aside from the legendary strawberry and cream combination. But before all of that, let's get your latest news headlines from Lewis Mackenzie.
Angela, thank you very much. Good morning. It's just after 11 o'clock. Here are your latest GB News headlines. The government says spending decisions have been made harder by the recent U-turn on welfare changes. This comes as the Chancellor says it's impossible for her to rule out tax rises in the autumn budget. Earlier today, Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson was asked by Camilla Tominey if she could confirm the government's position.
When it comes to future decisions in the budget, those are matters for the Chancellor. It is important that the numbers add up, that we adhere to our fiscal rules, and we've got a clear plan for making sure the country continues to see economic growth.
But it sounds like you're not ruling out tax rises.
Well, these are not decisions for me as Education Secretary. They're matters for the Chancellor. This will all be taken together in the budget. But what is critical, and what we've always been clear about, is that getting economic growth is absolutely essential, because if we grow our economy, we're in a much stronger position where it comes to our ability to invest.
The Conservative Party wants to ban foreigners from claiming key disability benefits to reduce the cost of Britain's welfare bill. Badenoch's party is calling on the Prime Minister to restrict personal independence payments and sickness top-ups to universal credit to UK citizens only. The Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride, was asked about the Conservative plan on GB News earlier today.
Government should come forward with a discussion document to look at this whole area, because we do believe that British citizenship should mean something. And when it comes to welfare, we know that the costs are ever spiralling upwards, and we need to get that under control. And that's a big dividing line between ourselves and Labour, and indeed between ourselves and Reform, who want to spend more, for example, by removing the two-child benefit cap. So we believe there should be a serious discussion about this in terms of arresting the size of the welfare bill.
Family hubs offering parenting support and youth services are to be set up and rolled out across every council in England. The Department for Education is putting £500 million into the scheme targeted at disadvantaged communities. They're aiming to have a Best Start family hub in every local authority by April of 2026. A total of 29 arrests were made during yesterday's protest in support of Palestine Action in Parliament Square. As Palestine Action is now prescribed, expressing support for them is a criminal offence. The group lost a last-minute court appeal on Friday night to temporarily block it from being designated as a terror group under the Terrorism Act. At least 51 people, including 15 children, have been killed in the US state of Texas after heavy rain caused flash flooding. The Guadalupe River burst its banks at around 4 a.m. local time on Friday, with as much as 10 inches of heavy rain falling in just a few hours overnight in the central Kerr County. The Texas governor described the incident as extraordinary catastrophe. Elon Musk says he has set up a new political party in the wake of his falling out with US President Donald Trump. The billionaire businessman claims he has taken the first steps in establishing the America Party. This comes after asking his social media followers if he should do so in an online poll. Now, the famous San Fermin festival has kicked off in the Spanish city of Pamplona today. At 12 o'clock local time, huge fireworks will shoot out into the air as rowdy revellers celebrate the start of festivities, splashing wine and singing in the central town square. Today is just the first of a 9-day fiesta, with the running of the bulls taking place tomorrow. And finally, the Prince of Darkness, Ozzy Osbourne, delighted tens of thousands of fans in an emotional farewell gig in Birmingham last night. Nearly 6 decades after helping pioneer heavy metal music, Black Sabbath returned to their home of Aston for their Back to the Beginning show at Villa Park Stadium. The one-off gig, with profits going to charity, was billed as Osbourne's last performance 5 years after the 76-year-old revealed he had Parkinson's disease. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'll be back in an hour's time, and it's now back to the legend, Angela Rippon.
Thanks, Lewis. Great to see Ozzy there, rocking away last night. Now, this week, the MP for Coventry South, Zara Sultana, announced that she was leaving the Labour Party to set up a new political party with the former Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn. Now, despite some reported miscommunications surrounding the launch of their new party, the days of two-party politics, as we know, are now clearly long forgotten, a deterioration that became marked through the rise of Nigel Farage's Reform UK, as well as, of course, Plaid Cymru in Wales and the SNP in Scotland. So now we've got really a right sort of political cocktail. We've got Labour, the Conservatives, Reform, the Lib Dems, the Greens, and whatever Sultana and Corbyn decide to christen their new venture. But do we really need any more parties in British politics? And if we do, what kind of party would you add to the mix? Well, that's what I'd like to ask my panel who've joined me here this morning. We've got political commentator Alice Grant, former Conservative Minister Tom Pursglove, and the former Labour Party Chair Baroness Hayter. So, the three of you, well-versed in politics, and I'm going to start with you, Baroness, if I may call you Diane. Do you mind?
Please,
Diane?
absolutely.
OK. Do we need another party?
As much as we need a hole in the head. No, we don't need another party, and I don't think this one's going to go anywhere. And, you know, one of the main reasons is the main thing any political party has to do is keep the country safe. And, you know, tomorrow's the 20th anniversary of the London bombs.
Yes.
These are important. This is a big role for any government and any opposition who wants to be in government. And I think a party that doesn't start off with that basic view is going to go nowhere. There are other things it's got to do. Clearly, it needs to do things that people can't do for themselves, the education, the health, the transport, and keep the economy going. And honestly, unless a party has a big idea of all those three, I don't think it's going anywhere.
Well, Tom, I mean, I suppose the more parties we've got, the more chance there is of having a coalition, and presumably that would preempt what Diane's actually been talking about.
Well, when you look, for example, at that most recent YouGov MRP poll, it leads to a very inconclusive set of outcomes, and you struggle to see how any parties could stand up a credible government. But we also live in very uncertain times, and I think that politics and the mainstream political parties who've held government over recent decades just haven't got to grips with this new reality. I think one of the challenges for us in the Conservative Party is the fact that government is struggling, is having an impact on us. I think the fact that we did so badly at the general election is a bad thing for the government in the sense of not having a hugely well-populated opposition in the House of Commons. So we do live in very, very uncertain political times in a way that is not akin to any other period that I can recall in recent living memory.
So, the two-party system doesn't work either, does it? Because you've got this flip-flop constantly. Whoever's in is desperate to get the other lot, to make sure that they stay in and keep the other lot out. The lot that's out, they're trying to get in and make sure that they get the lot that's in out. I mean, it's nonsense, isn't it? We surely don't we need a bit more levelling up of ideas within the House of Commons? Alice?
I agree very much with what you said, Angela. I think what we've seen over the last decades, really, is a lack of being able to differentiate substantially between the Conservative and the Labour Party from the voters' perspective. Therefore, it is no surprise that we've seen a rise of parties like Reform who are offering something very clear. And I think, interestingly, with this new party made by Sultana and Corbyn, a recent poll has shown that they could actually sweep up almost 10% of Labour's current votes. Therefore, there is an appetite, clearly, for people who at least stand for something rather than stand for something which is difficult to ascertain, which I think is unfortunately the case of Labour in its current form, where politicians like Keir Starmer can't be readily differentiated from a standard Tory politician from the eyes of voters. Interestingly, I think that the way our system works with the opposition party and a party in government is actually a very effective way to govern a country. I think the two-party political system is there for a reason, and it is something that makes us, I think, quite special and unique compared to the continent, for example, where they always struggle to form coherent governments. What would be interesting is that if there could be perhaps a bit more of a revival from the Conservative Party and a taking on of and a listening to what voters really need and want to hear from them. And that's the only chance they'll ever have for survival in this current climate.
I mean, I think it's interesting that you say Reform are clear. I don't know. I don't know what is in the Reform manifesto. I haven't seen it. I haven't got a clue what they're actually standing for on a huge number of matters. But they have recently lost, haven't they, 3 seats in the local elections. Those people that voted for them instead of voting for Labour, they've gone back to voting for Labour again. But what does it tell us, do you think, about the general attitude towards politics in this country now? That at the last general election, we had a very, very low turnout. People are becoming totally disenchanted, not just with parties in particular, but politics in general. So what does that tell us about the way in which politicians in general are failing us?
It's not just in the UK. I think that's quite important. You know, it's very easy to say, oh, it's Keir or it's Kemi or whatever. Actually, if you look everywhere, that drop in polling is everywhere. Shall we tell them a secret? We were having a coffee outside before we came in. Are we allowed to say that?
Yeah, go on.
And one of the things I think we both agree on, and I think actually from what you've just said, is the importance of a good opposition. I think it's good for government for 2 reasons. One is it keeps government on its toes. Yeah. But the other, the opposition must always be ready and preparing to come into government. Yeah. And the problem with Reform, I think it is offering not something that people understand. It's offering what appear to be easy answers, and that is a real danger, because it would disappoint people if people think that the world as it is, with its complexity, with its wars going on, with the economic challenges, with the environmental challenges, with mass migration, if anyone thinks there's something easy, then they will be disappointed if they vote for reform, because it isn't easy. So I think that the established parties, if you like, have to really think about how we can help people understand that there are not quick solutions to actually quite complicated.
It's interesting, of course, because the Labour Party were in opposition for 14 years and they've come into politics clearly totally unprepared, because everything that's happened in the last year suggests that they didn't actually manage to come in and from day one do all the things that they'd promised to do. But
they weren't totally unprepared. Just to say, you know, we've done quite a lot of good things. I'm not saying
not as
there've been no
prepared
lessons,
as they should have been.
But I think totally unprepared isn't correct.
Not as prepared as they should have been. But I mean, is there an anxiety here that, as we've seen in Europe, that politics are becoming polarised? They're going to the hard right, they're going to the hard left. Is that what happens when we have this two-party system? That when neither party is satisfying the electorate, you end up with a vacuum and you cannot be sure of what's going to fill it? I mean, what do we think a Corbyn new party would achieve?
Well, I actually think that you're right, but I'd go a little bit further than that. So I think one of the big challenges that we have got to come to terms with is this issue of broken promises and U-turns and trust. And we've got a falling public trust in our institutions and in our democracy and the outcomes that politics delivers. But also this inability often to explain difficult choices, to unpack the complexity of a lot of the big issues that our country faces are not easy to solve. And often it is politically advantageous to try and boil them down in really simple terms to get them across as sound bites that capture news coverage or that is easy to present on social media.
In other words, be economical with the truth.
No, I wouldn't put it in those terms, but I just think not being as candid with the public about everything that decisions involve, what they mean, what the pounds, shillings and pence of that look like, what the choices are. We often don't get that across in some of the coverage and in some of the social media content, and I do think that is eroding public trust. But I also don't think we can be complacent about these challenger parties. People sort of thought that in advance of those local elections that the whole reform polling was theoretical. That became very real on the 1st of May, and I think the same applies to the Liberal Democrats who are on the march as well as the Greens.
But isn't that the problem? That people will just vote for a change for the sake of it because they're fed up with the other two parties without even necessarily knowing what they are voting for. I mean, what are Sultana and Corbyn going to stand for?
That's very interesting. I think firstly, the answer is certainly not less transparency with the electorate, who are sort of desperate for real answers and real facts, but actually more. Interestingly, the vacuum which you identified, I feel, is possibly leadership, and I think is actually very much leadership. The reason why parties like Reform are doing so well, and even parties like Jeremy Corbyn's new party has the potential to do very well, is name recognition and strong leadership, or at least perceived that way. So someone like Farage, I agree, I think Reform presents many problems in terms of their ability to actually deliver on anything they're able to say, because of course Nigel Farage is a one-man vehicle and the Reform Party is a one-man vehicle. So question as to how they're actually going to be able to run the country. However, at least a voter is very clear on what Nigel Farage represents and who he is. So when it comes to ticking that cross in the ballot box, no wonder they're doing so well, because he's very clear. And the thing is that at the moment we have a Conservative Party that don't have that same energy and that same leadership and, of course, name recognition. I mean, the last Conservative leader to do incredibly well was Boris Johnson with his 80-seat majority. And I think we can see how those two things are clearly there. Leadership, name recognition, and an ability to have a very clear message, get Brexit done, which obviously resonated with voters at the time.
Well, I think we have several weeks before we discover exactly what Sultana and Corbyn are going to do and who is likely to follow them. But interesting points of view from every one of you. Thank you all very much indeed. Diane, Tom and Alice, thank you. And you'll be joining me at the head of the next hour of the programme at 12 noon, won't you? Look forward to seeing you then. Thank you. Well, following a week of soaring temperatures, we've got the coolest cash prize of the summer to be won. It's a totally tax-free £54,321, which is up for grabs in our latest Great British giveaway, and it could be yours. Here's all the details that you need.
The Great British Giveaway is now even greater, with your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally tax-free £54,321 cash could be yours. Cash that you could spend however you like. It's like having an extra £1,000 each week for a whole year to play with. Imagine what you could do with that. Someone is guaranteed to win this amazing amount of cash, so make sure that someone could be you. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, coming up, with summer now hopefully here to stay for a while, I'm going to be speaking to a top garden designer to find out what the green-fingered amongst you should be doing to keep your gardens blooming in these hot temperatures. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, but for today with me, Angela Rippon, here on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain. We like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, before we move on, we've got a very special show later on this afternoon with Eamon Holmes. It's called Sunday with Eamon, and it's live at 3 p.m. Now, we've seen the hottest day of the year this week with a temperature of 34.7 degrees centigrade recorded at St James's Park in London on Tuesday. But what does that mean for our beautiful gardens and natural landscapes here in this country? Well, how can we best care for them in the heat? And as we're now into July, what should the green-fingered amongst us be doing for the warm months that are ahead? Joining me now from his beautiful garden is garden designer Anthony Henn. Hello, Anthony.
Hi, Angela. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Now, tell me, I mean, you're sitting among grass there by the look of it.
Well,
Is that...
when you say Anthony Henn's beautiful garden, I mean, we deliver lots of beautiful gardens around the country. And this is like a bit of an antidote, to be honest, to the perfectly manicured gardens that I normally do. Because this is, in a way, this is my favourite kind of place. I'm at my brother-in-law's in Dorset. In Sherborne, which is an amazing place, fantastic gardens and stuff around here. But they've left their garden, which I kind of recommended earlier. Why don't you give it a go for No Mow May, which is a campaign to kind of semi-rewild people's gardens, so it's not all perfectly manicured, so it's for wildlife. And he's done it here with the family, with Annie and the guys, and it's fantastic. I haven't been here for a few months. They've got lovely mown paths through the bank here. It's a bit of an awkward garden because it's a bank, a bit slope. And look at this, it's beautiful. And we've got lovely things. There's grasshoppers. I haven't seen grasshoppers for years. There's grasshoppers and crickets running around. There's slow worms down the bottom. It's like, and there's no maintenance, you see. Sorry, I'm waffling on about Angela, sorry. But,
a no maintenance garden, I think that's everybody's dream, isn't it? Something that looks beautiful. But particularly in England, I mean, we know we hear of the English country garden, but in Great Britain as a whole, we're used to seeing certain plants. We're seeing roses, delphiniums, lupins, all of the things that we're used to here. But if we're going to go on having this very, very hot weather, have we got to start thinking, Anthony, about introducing other plants to our gardens that can actually cope with the heat?
Yeah, well, that's a really good point. I mean, for people listening, and we recommend that to all our customers as well, you can grow even delphiniums, roses. If you need quite a lot of water, roses a bit less so. If you can get your soil right and you can mulch your garden, my best recommendation really is to get some organic compost or well-rotted farmyard manure. And if you can water the garden once thoroughly and then add about 3 or 4 centimetres or 2 to 3 centimetres of lovely organic matter over the top of the soil, it acts like a hat and it keeps the moisture in. It looks beautiful, keeps the moisture in, and your plants, even your sort of moisture-loving plants, will survive much better this time of year. So long term, I hear what you're saying, and I think there will be a slight change. But I think in the meantime, as long as we water thoroughly once and then mulch, you then don't have to water every day. You may have to water once every 2 or 3 weeks rather than every day.
In other words, making sure that the ground itself is able to hold the water once you put it in there.
Exactly, because most gardens I visit, you can see the soil on the top, but it's like dry-looking, especially if you've got clay, which is fine for plants, as long as you can break it up with organic matter. But it just sucks the water out like a wick, you see. If you can put this hat of mulch over the top, it kind of stops the moisture underneath. Because that may look dry, but it stops the moisture evaporating.
Anthony, I have to ask you, not everybody, of course, has a garden. A lot of people will have a patio or a balcony or a window box. And once you've got plants in those containers, whether they're pots or boxes or whatever, they do need quite regular watering, don't they? I mean, but I read somewhere that plants don't like to go to bed with wet feet. So watering at night, apparently, is not the answer. What's the best way to keep our pots looking lovely?
I don't actually agree with that because I think that's more in the winter. Things don't like being wet when they're dormant. In the summer, this time of year, when things, especially in containers, which are restrictive space, so you've got to look after them. You can't expect them to get anything from... The rain won't do any good at all, even in the garden. Unless it rains 3 days solid, it will not penetrate the ground. Likewise with troughs and containers, you've got to water by hand. I mean, it's a lot of wastewater we're chucking down the sink. So when you're doing your washing up, as long as there's nothing too poisonous in there, a bit of fairy liquid is fine. Use your bucket of wastewater, water your plants with that. I don't think it matters, evening or early morning, as long as they're getting water regularly. And then choose plants like we've got around us, like these all native grasses and, you know, some basically wild flowers which don't need moisture. But if you go for like ornamental grasses, and plants with small leaves like alpines. Olive trees are great on patios and places which don't need too much water. So basically go for more Mediterranean lavender, sage. A lot of the herbs are ideal. Maybe just don't go for the kind of traditional petunia, kind of very leafy annuals. Even geraniums are quite good. So in other words, yes, choose your plants, mix in more grasses and more succulents, and certain things you won't need to water at all if you go for like alpines and certain grasses. And we're doing some more borders for a garden on a roll where we're copying a kind of wild meadow look. So it's grasses and perennials, great for bees and butterflies, and also don't need too much water. Does that answer the question in a roundabout
Well, I think
sort
it
of
does.
way?
And I think also what you're suggesting very, very, very briefly is that we have to start planning now for what our gardens are going to look like next year by ordering the plants, thinking about how we might change how our gardens look. Anthony, you look very comfortable sitting there among the grasses and the slow worms and the bees. And yes, there we go. There we are. Anthony Henn, gardener. Actually not doing any gardening at all, but but just enjoying a very, very different sort of garden. Anthony, thank you so much for all of those tips. I think that our viewers have found them and listeners have found them very, very helpful. You enjoy your day in the garden.
Lovely to see you. Bye.
Bye-bye now. Coming up next, the remarkable story of one humanitarian aid worker known as the Angel of Mustar. Sally Becker is what she's called, and she's written a book about her incredible work, and she's going to be joining me shortly here on Sunday with Michael Portillo. But for today, with me, Angela Rippon, here on GB News.
Hello there, this is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. If you are heading to Wimbledon today, we could see some thundery showers around throughout the first parts of this afternoon, or because low pressure is in charge across the UK, providing a reasonably unsettled theme, and it's particularly this front pushing southeastwards across England that is already providing some quite heavy pulses of rain. And across southeastern areas of England, those could intensify into thunderstorms throughout the rest of today. Some hail, strong gusty winds around, so it is worth taking care. Despite that, we are holding on to a fair amount of humidity in the south as well, so temperatures here will manage to climb towards the mid-20s of degrees Celsius. There'll be lighter showers across Wales, southwestern England, 20-21 degrees Celsius possible here. Again, a lot of cloud around for northern England, but hopefully some brighter spells emerging for Northern Ireland, but more so across northern Scotland as we head throughout the day. But again, still the odd shower to watch out for. There is quite a brisk breeze around today, and that will grow stronger, particularly through the North Channel, affecting coastal regions here down across the Isle of Man during this evening, gusts of 40-45 miles an hour. But that breeze is also pushing all this cloud and rain further southward, so some further pulses of heavy rain possible across England and Wales during the forthcoming nights, but otherwise some clear spells developing, and it will be relatively fresh. Temperatures in towns and cities dropping back to 10-14 degrees Celsius, but might even see single figures in rural parts of Scotland. There'll be that heavy rain still lingering for parts of Wales, southern England first thing tomorrow, but it will eventually clear its way off, and certainly into the afternoon the sunshine should break through a bit more readily across many areas. A few showers always skirting around some coastal districts, but temperatures fairly around average for the time of year, 20-23 degrees Celsius, but we do hold on to that breeze, so it will feel cool if you're exposed to that. We are, though, likely to be seeing more sunshine as we head throughout the week, and that will come with rising temperatures, potentially 30 degrees Celsius. Bye-bye.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we are proud to stand for you, for the Britain you love. for the communities you live in. That's what makes us the fearless champions of Britain. Its voices and its values. Because we, at GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo, with me, Angela Rippon. Well, as war in Europe and the Middle East rages on, humanitarian efforts continue to try and help vulnerable civilians, particularly the children who are caught up in war zones. Sally Becker has long been on the front line in such conflicts. 30 years ago, in 1993, she got into Bosnia-Herzegovina when that country was in the midst of a civil war, earning her the title of the Angel of Mostar when she managed to evacuate badly injured children who were caught up in the bloodshed. She's written a new book. It's called Where Angels Fear to Tread, which reflects on her years of working in some of the world's most dangerous places. And I'm delighted to say that Sally is joining me now from her home. Sally, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, nice to see you.
Sally, I think that all of us at the moment are finding that the news is just dominated with scenes of devastation, destruction in Ukraine, of course, in Gaza, and a conflict that perhaps doesn't get quite so many headlines, but the terrible things that are happening in Sudan at the moment, where there is a disastrous war happening. I think it affects every one of us. But for you, it must be like watching a horror film unravelling, a film in which you are desperate to make a positive commitment.
Yes, every time I see the news and there's another conflict, and there are so many, I feel I ought to be doing something, just because I've done it before and I know that I've, made a difference here and there. So it's basically my life's work now.
It is indeed. I mean, your book is very evocative in actually describing what happened and what you've done over the years. And I think many of us, as I say, would perhaps watch these things unfolding on television and say, oh, how terrible that is, but it's not something I can do anything about. Just explain what it was that happened, what the television programme was that made you not just think, isn't that awful, but that actually you can get up and do something positive to make a difference.
Well, I was working as an artist in Spain, and I saw a news report coming out of Bosnia. It was from Sarajevo. And to be honest, I didn't even know where Bosnia was at that time. But I saw a young woman trying to cross the road with her little boy, and there were snipers operating in the area. She was obviously very frightened, and she suddenly saw the film crew. And she came over, looked straight into the camera, and she said, "Why is no one helping us?" And I felt like she was talking to me.
And that message came across, but what was it that actually made you think, actually, I can do something here? And having made that decision, how did you set about doing it?
So I actually thought I'd go out there and help out in a refugee camp or something for 2 or 3 weeks. I had no idea that I'd end up still doing it 30-odd years later. But once I got there, I was taking aid to the hospital in West Mostar, which was controlled by the Croats. And one day a UN officer came to see me and said, "You're the only international aid worker allowed in that area. Could you help us get permission to bring out a child from the other side, from the east side of Mostar, where 60,000 people are trapped?" No aid had gone in for 3 months. Nobody had been evacuated, and these people were dying for want of the most basic medical supplies. So I went to see the head of the local military health authorities, told him about the child, and he said, "You can bring out all the sick and injured children and their mothers." And that was it.
Well, you brought them out, and you've been, as you say, for 30 years you've been doing it in other war zones and other areas of conflict. How do you get treatment for these children in particular? I mean, there's a wonderful description in your book where you say when you went first of all into Mustar, and the smell of decay, the smell of blood, finding a young girl of 16 who'd had to have a leg amputated without any anaesthetic, children whose bodies were absolutely destroyed. How do you then get those children treated? Who are the doctors that are working with you?
So back then, I didn't know what to do. I just knew I had to get them out somewhere safe. And I was able to take them in my ambulance, and I kept coming back for more kids. And then I would pass them over to the UN, who would then fly them to various countries for medical treatment. But later, for example, in Mosul, I was working with a paediatrician in the city. ISIS were fighting the coalition forces, and my job was to go to the front line with an ambulance, pick up the injured kids and their families, bring them to our little paediatric unit where he would treat them. And some of these kids, he just wasn't able to help because they had complex injuries or complex diseases. So I created a little WhatsApp group with some specialists abroad, and they advised us on what to do. And I realized that we were able to save lives that way without them having to risk their lives or anything. So when I got back to Britain, I went to see a professor of pediatrics and a software developer. They'd been working together and created a platform of telehealth, telemedicine. And together we created this app, which we have called Save a Child, which connects specialists around the world with doctors and medics treating kids in areas of conflict. And they give them advice, and we've been able to help save thousands of lives that way.
That's extraordinary.
Obviously, I still have to go to places,
Yeah,
but a lot of our work now is remote.
That's absolutely wonderful. Sally, I know you're about to go off to Syria, aren't you? What are you hoping to achieve there?
The aim is to make this app available there in Syria to remote areas, besieged areas. I mean, fortunately, there isn't an actual war raging at the moment, but there are pockets. But there are these clinics who just don't have access to paediatric expertise. So I'll show them how to use the app, and then hopefully they'll use us the same as they're using us in Afghanistan and other areas.
In other words, just that one television programme that has sent you on this 30-year journey has now put you in a position where you can make experts, paediatricians, doctors all over the world available to children and probably to their parents as well, in whatever area of conflict there is in the world. Sally, I think I had the pleasure of presenting you with an award as an outstanding woman, and I think everything that you have done in the last 30 years and everything that you are planning to do in the future and that you have achieved now with this app really does single you out as a very exceptional woman. So travel safely when you go to Syria, and thank you for all that you do. Thank you, Sally, for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Sally Becker there and if you want to read her story, as we say, her book is called Where Angels Fear to Tread. Well, it's time now for our daily reflection.
The GB News Daily Reflection.
Hi, my name is Jordan, and I'm a vicar in the Church of England. Over this week, we are going to be exploring one of Jesus' most famous parables. A parable is a story which demonstrates a deeper spiritual meaning, and it's found in Luke 15. It's called the parable of the prodigal son. The story begins: a man has 2 sons. The younger asks for his share of the inheritance, which is basically like wishing his father was dead. The father shockingly gives his son the inheritance, and he runs off with it to a distant land. Whilst there, he splurges it all. A famine breaks out, and in desperation, he gets a job feeding the pigs. In the squalor of his suffering, he realizes his great mistake. As the famous Coldplay song says, when you get what you want, but not what you need, Sometimes getting what we want is the worst thing for us, as is the case in this story. But other times, when we don't get the job we want or we miss out on that great opportunity, it might not be what we need. As Christians, we believe God always gives us what we need and offers what is good for us.
Coming up, it's officially strawberries and cream season as the Wimbledon Tennis Championships got underway this week. But what other culinary delights need to be part of your picnic lineup? Well, we're going to be tasting some of them here in the studio next. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, but for today with me, Angela Rippon, here on GB News.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The fresh northwesterly winds that are currently across the UK are also beginning to spread into other areas of Western Europe and helping to ease the heat wave that they've had here recently. Still, though, there are plenty of heavy showers and thunderstorms here, particularly across parts of Iberia, the Alps and towards the Balkans. The heat, though, is getting squeezed towards eastern areas of continental Europe, and so here temperatures are still going to be notably above average as we head over the next few days, but with some sunshine.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show. It's not a bad brand. Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's News Channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Welcome back. back to Sunday with Michael Portillo, with me, Angela Rippon, for today. Now, Wimbledon is in full swing at the moment, and as usual, there are strawberries and cream out in full force. But what other picnic staples should we be buying as we settle down to watch the championships in glorious sunshine? Well, the president of the Restaurant Association, Robert Walton, MBE, joins me now, but we've also got strawberries, cream, scones, jam.
We have it all
champagne.
here.
It's all here. You brought a picnic into the studio, Robert.
We've got it. I love this little dish here, what we found. It's got a crown on, which is perfect
lovely
for Wimbledon.
Now, strawberries and cream.
Strawberries.
I mean, I know it's summer and it's Wimbledon and it always happens, but they have become associated with Wimbledon.
Well, really, I mean, strawberries and cream seem to be Wimbledon, don't they?
Yes.
And you know, there's a few statistics which I think we should have. How many strawberries are sold? How many strawberries? 1.9 million strawberries.
That's individual strawberries?
Individual.
Not punnets?
Counted 140,000 punnets. 38 tons of strawberries. Wow. 38 tons of strawberries. So it's a lot of strawberries. But the wonderful thing about Wimbledon is they've just kept the price. They've just tweaked it a little bit.
Well, apparently they've tweaked it a bit. I heard...
only 20p. So it went from £2.50, which I think is amazing value, to £2.70. So I think that's pretty good value, don't you?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
Considering in this world of where we live.
Are you not allowed to take your own strawberries to Wimbledon?
Well, I don't think you could probably take them in, but I think you can probably do them on Henman Hill and all around, all little picnic areas where you can have, and you can then have your scones, of course, which is another wonderful part of Wimbledon.
Very West.
So are we scones or scones?
Scones.
Are we scones?
Either.
Are we Cornish or are we Devon?
We are definitely. I'm Devon.
You're
I
Devon.
always put the cream on first with jam
Cornwall.
on top.
That's Cornwall.
That's Cornwall, is it? Well, that's what I do.
I do. But I live in Devon.
Yes.
So I'm doing it the wrong way.
Are you?
I live in Devon, which is jam and then cream.
Right. I don't see the point of putting the jam on because the cream's like the butter. Anyway, that's the thing being. I mean, how can we tell that our strawberries are going to be really sweet and juicy? Because what I've
Devon
discovered...
is cream first and then jam.
Yeah.
I'll make sure I get all that right, seeing as I live there.
What I've discovered over the years is that they can get a bit woody, can't they, at this time of year? How do we know we're getting them lovely and juicy? Yeah.
So, I mean... Well, a lot of the strawberries, English strawberries are the best, aren't they?
Yeah.
So you have the timeline of English strawberries. I love seasonal. I'm very much involved in the Restaurant Association. I'm very much involved in hospitality. I love seasonal food. Everything these days should be about seasons. So I don't like strawberries in December that have come from somewhere else, wherever they've come from. No problem, they can come from somewhere else. But if you really want beautiful, sweet, and this year with the sun that we've had, early sunshine, we've had these incredible strawberries, this big English strawberries. So we've got a gorgeous selection of strawberries, so by all means have one. We've also got some champagne. Do you know how many bottles of champagne are sold at Wimbledon?
Oh, thousands.
30,000 bottles of champagne.
Crikey.
Which is not bad, is it?
Well, it's lovely to have a picnic, of course, at Wimbledon, but picnics are very much part of British summers, aren't they?
Totally.
And I mean, these days, I suppose you can get just about anything for a picnic in a supermarket, in a food store.
Yeah.
Have we lost the art of making our own food for
Well, I
picnics?
think it's very easy, isn't it? You can go and, as you say, pick up your picnic, literally from as you say, a supermarket. Isn't it wonderful? I mean, scones are not difficult to make, to be quite honest. Scones or scones. But to really make some egg sandwiches with cress, I mean, it's not difficult, is it? So I think we should really try and do as much as we can if we're having a little afternoon tea picnic somewhere. But isn't it gorgeous to take a little hamper? But go anywhere. You can go sitting in the countryside, a little hamper, a couple of glasses, a few plates.
But not just to go out. I mean, isn't it fun to have a picnic at home, perhaps?
Having an afternoon tea at home. Afternoon tea is so popular now. It seems to have had a regeneration, afternoon tea. I mean, you just look in London restaurants, but look at restaurants all over the country now. And at afternoon tea, everyone wants to take their mum out or go out or just a couple and go and have afternoon tea. Go and have it everywhere.
Yeah.
Every day.
But sit in your own garden, sit in your own sitting room and have a little picnic.
Why not?
Has continental Europe or other places that can guarantee their summer weather, are they better at doing picnics than we are?
I don't think... Well, it's a different picnic, isn't it? Isn't a British picnic an English picnic? Isn't it a wonderful thing? I don't know whether it's the same picnic. I mean, it will be a very continental picnic.
Oh, it'll probably be
have,
pizza.
Well, it might be, you know, lots of chorizos and lots of other things, which is equally be wonderful.
Yes.
But I think there's something so quintessentially British about.
But isn't there something wonderful about eating in the open air?
Gorgeous. Love it.
What is it, do you think, that makes us enjoy it that much more?
Probably because...
I mean, not if a wasp or a bee comes around. Or,
no, not many wasps this year yet. I haven't seen any. But I suppose it's all to do with the weather, isn't it? You know, we're always talking about the weather. So the fact is that when we have the sunshine, which we've had plenty of this year so far, so it's been amazing, we want to sit outside and a barbecue, a picnic, afternoon tea. It's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah, I think what is wonderful about our warmer British summers is any city, anywhere, any town in Britain now, you find more and more people, more and more restaurants are providing tables outside.
Oh, very
people
much,
do like to be outside.
Yeah.
And so, as we say, we've got Wimbledon, so we automatically think of strawberries and cream.
We do.
But I suppose we can sit at home and watch the telly.
Of course.
With a plate of strawberries and cream, and that
not?
gives us the atmosphere, do you
Yes.
think?
We could sit, absolutely, absolutely. And, of course, COVID changed a lot of the eating spaces outside. So a lot of the places that you couldn't eat, you can eat now, and that's just remained there. So, hence, you've got all these new eating areas. And if we keep this beautiful weather, then people want to eat outside.
We do.
We do.
Wonderful.
We haven't eaten any strawberries.
We haven't, but I think we're going to, Robert,
We're going to
because we're
dive
going to go
in
into a commercial break now, and I'm going to be diving into them. Robert, thank you very much
Thank
indeed
you very
for joining
much.
us.
It's a pleasure.
Enjoy your strawberries and cream, even if you're watching tennis on the telly. That concludes the first hour of the show today, but please do rejoin me at noon. My panel will share what they would do to rebuild the NHS following the government's 10-year plan that was unveiled this week. We'll also delve into the theatrical highlights of the week with Stefan Kyriasis. Possible evidence of a Roman villa has been discovered in a small Gloucestershire village. I'm going to be speaking to the Dig's site manager. And a brand new book attempts to uncover the truth behind the death of Marilyn Monroe. One of its authors is going to share more with me here on Michael Portillo with, for today, me, Angela Rippon, here on GB News. See you in a minute.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed home battery storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, this is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. If you are heading to Wimbledon today, we could see some thundery showers around throughout the first parts of this afternoon, or because low pressure is in charge across the UK, providing a reasonably unsettled theme, and it's particularly this front pushing southeastwards across England that is already providing some quite heavy pulses of rain. And across southeastern areas of England, those could intensify into thunderstorms throughout the rest of today. Some hail, strong gusty winds around, so it is worth taking care. Despite that, we are holding on to a fair amount of humidity in the south as well, so temperatures here will manage to climb towards the mid-20s of degrees Celsius. There'll be lighter showers across Wales, southwestern England, 20-21 degrees Celsius possible here. Again, a lot of cloud around for northern England, but hopefully some brighter spells emerging for Northern Ireland, but more so across northern Scotland as we head throughout the day. But again, still the odd shower to watch out for. There is quite a brisk breeze around today, and that will grow stronger, particularly through the North Channel, affecting coastal regions here down across the Isle of Man during this evening, gusts of 40-45 miles an hour. But that breeze is also pushing all this cloud and rain further southward, so some further pulses of heavy rain possible across England and Wales during the forthcoming nights, but otherwise some clear spells developing, and it will be relatively fresh. Temperatures in towns and cities dropping back to 10-14 degrees Celsius, but we might even see single figures in rural parts of Scotland. There'll be that heavy rain still lingering for parts of Wales, southern England first thing tomorrow, but it will eventually clear its way off, and certainly into the afternoon the sunshine should break through a bit more readily across many areas. A few showers always skirting around some coastal districts, but temperatures fairly around average for the time of year, 20-23 degrees Celsius, but we do hold on to that breeze, so it will feel cool if you're exposed to that. We are, though, likely to be seeing more sunshine as we head throughout the week, and that will come with rising temperatures, potentially 30 degrees Celsius. Bye-bye.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine having an extra £1,000 to spend each week for an entire year. £54,321 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to spend however you like. £54,321 in cash could be landing in your bank account this year. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo with me, Angela Rippon, for today on this, the first Sunday of July. Now, Charles Dickens described summer in Oliver Twist as the prime and vigour of the year, when all things were glad and flourishing. Well, you are most welcome to another hour of vigorous conversation on politics, theatre, history and current affairs. Well, this week, a new 10-year plan for the National Health Service was unveiled as the Prime Minister warned that the NHS must reform or die. But what would my panel, I wonder, do to save our health service? I'm going to be asking them for their suggestions shortly. Arts editor at The Express, Stefan Keriazis, is going to join me to review some of the newest plays that are hitting the West End, including the new, quite controversial revival of Evita. Archaeological excavations in the village of Willersley in Gloucestershire have revealed an exciting new find. I'm going to be joined by their site manager, who helped to unearth some evidence which casts the village in a whole new light. And Marilyn Monroe is, of course, a household name, but how much do you know about the circumstances around her death and the girl who grew up to be a Hollywood star? Well, an author of a new book about the star's final days, I hope, is going to join me to reveal all. But before that, your latest news headlines with Lewis Mackenzie.
Angela, thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's just after 12 o'clock. Here are your latest GB News headlines. The government says spending decisions have been made harder by the recent U-turn on welfare changes. This comes as the Chancellor says it's impossible for her to rule out tax rises in the autumn budget. Earlier today, Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson was asked by Camilla Tominey if she could confirm the government's position.
When it comes to future decisions in the budget, those are matters for the Chancellor. It is important that the numbers add up, that we adhere to our fiscal rules, and we've got a clear plan for making sure the country continues to see economic growth.
But it sounds like you're not ruling out tax rises.
Well, these are not decisions for me as Education Secretary. They're matters for the Chancellor. This will all be taken together in the budget. But what is critical, and what we've always been clear about, is that getting economic growth is absolutely essential, because if we grow our economy, we're in a much stronger position where it comes to our ability to invest.
The Conservative Party say they want to ban foreigners from claiming key disability benefits to reduce the cost of Britain's welfare bill. Badenoch's party is calling on the Prime Minister to restrict personal independence payments and sickness top-ups to universal credit to UK citizens only. The Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride, was asked about the Conservatives' plan earlier on GB News.
The government should come forward with a discussion document to look at this whole area, because we do believe that British citizenship should mean something. And when it comes to welfare, we know that the costs are ever spiralling upwards, and we need to get that under control. And that's a big dividing line between ourselves and Labour, and indeed between ourselves and Reform, who want to spend more, for example, by removing the two-child benefit cap. So we believe there should be a serious discussion about this in terms of arresting the size of the welfare bill.
Family hubs offering parenting support and youth services are set to be rolled out across every council in England. The Department for Education is putting £500 million into the scheme, targeted at disadvantaged communities. They're aiming to have a Best Start family hub in every local authority by April of 2026. A total of 29 arrests were made during yesterday's protest in support of Palestine Action in Parliament Square. As Palestine Action is now prescribed, expressing support for them is a criminal offence. The group lost a last-minute court of appeal bid on Friday night to temporarily block it from being designated as a terror group under the Terrorism Act. At least 51 people, including 15 children, have been killed in the US state of Texas after heavy rain caused flash flooding. The Guadalupe River burst its banks at around 4 a.m. local time on Friday, with as much as 10 inches of heavy rain falling in just a few hours over the central Kerr County. The Texas state governor has described the incident as an extraordinary catastrophe. Staying in the States now, Elon Musk says he has set up a new political party in the wake of his fallout with US President Donald Trump. The billionaire businessman claims he has taken the first steps in establishing the America Party. This comes after asking his social media followers if he should do so in an online poll. The famous San Fermin festival has kicked off in the Spanish city of Pamplona today. It's just the first day of the 9-day fiesta, with the running of the bulls taking place tomorrow afternoon. And finally, the Prince of Darkness, Ozzy Osbourne, delighted tens of thousands of fans in an emotional farewell gig in Birmingham last night. Nearly 6 decades after helping pioneer heavy metal music, Black Sabbath returned to their home of Aston for their Back to the Beginning show at Villa Park Stadium. The one-off gig, with profits going to charity, was billed as Osbourne's last performance 5 years after the 76-year-old revealed he had Parkinson's disease. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. Now it's back to Angela.
Thanks a lot, Lewis. Now, this week, a new 10-year plan for the National Health Service was unveiled by Sir Keir Starmer and the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. Now, the Prime Minister said that the strategy would fundamentally rewire the NHS, with the announcement focusing on creating new neighbourhood health centres. And they promised same-day GP appointments with NHS app. That'll come as a welcome news to a lot of people. Well, with the government saying that the NHS either needs to reform or die, what would my panel do, I wonder, to rebuild the health service? Do the proposed reforms, in fact, do enough? Now, before we start, I'm just going to give you some facts and figures, because I've looked into this, because there's a programme here that I am desperate to make. And it is this, that when Nye Bevins set up the National Health Service in 1948, his budget was 437 million. And he had a blank sheet of paper. Nobody else had done it anywhere in the world, so it was all starting fresh. Last year, the budget for the NHS was 188.5 billion. I would love to give a set of medics, not a politician in sight, but medics, medical charities, people who are observers, and other nations, and say, you've got 188.5 billion, blank sheet of paper, design a health service for the 21st and 22nd century. That's what I would like to do. What do you guys want to do? Now, Tom, you actually held a position in government as you were in the department at the time, just for social services and the disabled, weren't you? So you've got a bit of insight on this. What would you do to reform the health service?
So I agree with the principle that sits behind the plan that the government has come out with this week around the right care at the right place at the right time. And I think that builds on things like community diagnostic centres and urgent care centres to try and move demand away from the acute side. So
this is what Lord Darcy suggested, isn't it?
So that's really important, and I think that's got such a key role to play in this. But you're right to touch on the fact that we need to be much more strategic. So one of the things that we need to do is to reduce net migration. That has clearly put a big strain on the number of people using these services. I think people around the country will recognise those pressures and what that has meant in terms of GP access and access.
You're talking about cause and effect here, aren't you, really, rather than actually changing the National Health Service?
Exactly. So you've got to deal with the demand side as well as reacting to medical circumstances.
OK, so you've now given yourself two problems as well.
It's not easy, but I often think the government doesn't necessarily look at this in a joined-up way. So, for example, this week, one of the things that really concerned me about the welfare reform falling apart, there's a question about the extent to which the welfare reform was actually a welfare reform in reality or whether it was just a cut. But actually, the principle of welfare reform is really important because work is a determinant of better health outcomes for many people. Getting people closer to the labour market, being part of something is really important for mental health, being able to support oneself, all the benefits that brings to families. And I think particularly when it comes to mental health, work has got such an important role to play. The fact that that is now in the long grass is a really unhelpful thing when it comes to trying to meet some of those demand pressures that we're talking about.
So we shouldn't be looking at the NHS in isolation. We should be looking at it in the round with all of the other departments that have an effect on it. Diane, I mean, you are a Labour peer. The Labour Party have, I think, in fact, most parties have dealt with the NHS like it's a sacred cow. People are not prepared to change it. They tinker around the edges of it. No one has had the courage to say, it doesn't work, let's start from the beginning again. How would you, as a Labour peer, change it?
First of all, I'd talk to Tom. What I mean is, it has to be bipartisan. This is too big an issue, and I really think that we're going to move forward. We've got to, as Tom says, we've got to look at education, employment, but we must also look at social services. And incidentally, we need immigration for that, for the social service side. But we need to talk.
For the Labour,
we know the parties have got to have a joint approach. But I'd just like to say happy birthday, because, of course, yesterday was the 77th birthday of the NHS. And it was also the 80th birthday of the Labour victory in 45. Now, that's important because there was 3 years between the two. So we think of the NHS as happening instantly. It took 3 years to do. So one of the things is we shouldn't do it too fast. But going back to that 3 years, there was a big debate. Should it be run by local authority or should it be run nationally? And Bevan won, and it was national. But actually, this plan is going back much more locally, and I think that's good. And it needs to move to prevention. We should look at alcohol misuse. We should be putting up the tax on things like that. We should be doing something close to your heart, which is lots of exercise and dancing and keep fit. We've got to take responsibility for our health. We should be doing more about good housing and jobs, as Tom says, because those is what what makes for good health. So we can't just look at this just as a national health service, national medical service, but as a national health service. So that blank piece of paper has to start with good prevention, the stuff that I'm afraid you and I had it as children.
Yes.
We had, you know, the youngsters won't remember this, but we had dentists coming into schools. There were people checking our teeth, checking our fitness right from schools. It's got to start.
There was more exercise in schools.
Yep. We ran around.
Nowadays,
we
they
walked
don't do
to school.
it.
We ran to school if we were late. We played outside in the rain. This sounds, and it just sounds as if us oldies know it, but actually, our generation and the generation before us, born during the war, were actually fitter than, I'm afraid, the two generations sitting next to me.
Chris Whitty is the man who has gone on record, who's the chief medical officer for England, who's gone on record as saying we must all take more responsibility for our own health. Alice, do you think that is something that will happen if we now have these regional, local hubs?
If they are actually implemented, firstly, I mean, when Lord Darcy proposed these similar plans, sadly very few actually came into materialisation, but we can hope in this case that they will, and I think it would be definitely a good thing to take personal responsibility for one's health, especially in terms of exercising, but I think eating healthy is probably the big one, especially nowadays when we're living in a world where multinational corporations are feeding us food which isn't healthy very cheaply. So, of course, people who simply can't afford to buy organic and all these things are going to just go for the cheapest, easiest option, and there's no proper regulation as to how this food has been processed and produced. I am very keen on eating well and eating cleanly, and that's something that I've recently sort of been turned to, so I think it's very important. But on the wider subject of these reforms, I think the real question that many people are asking is how on earth are you going to fund it? I mean, just recently, Keir Starmer made a massive U-turn on the PIP, welfare systems, and that was supposed to generate $5 billion. Now that's been drastically reduced. In fact, it's going to cost taxpayers tens of millions to even see those welfare reforms implemented. Britain is cash-strapped completely and utterly. We are not in a position where we can be having fanciful conversations about what we'd love to do with our NHS, when actually we need to reduce all the waste management and all the funding mismanagement that's happening in the NHS, and we need to have very frank conversations. I mean, obviously, I dearly love our National Health Service, and the people who work there have done so well, but in fact, a lot of these reforms are a bit odd, and I wonder what doctors and medics would think. I mean, something proposed by West Streeting was the idea that patients should be the ones deciding whether their medical professional gets paid in full for their services, which would create very, very strange issues if you get to decide how much your doctor's being paid. What would then happen in terms of being, operations and medicines being given, and there could be complexities as to incentive there. So I wonder actually how beneficial these reforms are going to be when implemented, and I think that we need to see frank conversations about the waste management.
I mean, it was interesting, Diane, because you have an interest, obviously, in the subject of alcoholism because of the charity with which you were involved. If the Chancellor wants to put up tax, why doesn't she put it on something like more and more bottles of beer and alcohol in general? Because that would at least produce... I think you gave me a figure of something like 5 billion...
It is extraordinary why she didn't do that. Particularly we got elected, we had a big majority. It's the time you can do that.
Yeah.
And it's not... I mean, it's good for people's health that they drink less. It's good on drink drive. There's all the other issues on, time off work. It is such an, relatively easy thing to do.
An obvious thing to do.
And also, the signal is that something that's bad for you, you should do in moderation. So it's quite an important message. Like the odd piece of chocolate is really good for you. Too much of it just isn't.
Can I just ask you very briefly, because sadly we're running out of time, we could talk about this for such a long time. Should we stop claiming that we have the best health service in the world when clearly we haven't, and actually look to see what other countries are doing and learning from them now, which they did from us to start with?
And actually that is something that the Health Secretary is talking about increasingly, which I think is good. And we should get under the bonnet of services and try and get to the heart of some of the big challenges that sit behind this. I think the ramp-up question that has just been raised about how quickly they'll get on and deliver these centres is going to be important in this. I think the plan is 50 by the end of this Parliament. That feels quite slow. But there's also things that we could be doing. So speaking to your radicalism in your sort of intro to this, which I really like, things like diet. the diet debate often focuses in very negative terms about what people shouldn't eat. We should be focusing more on things like healthy addition, things like dried fruit, nuts and seeds, which have got a massive role to play. And what can we do to try and help people to do more of that, rather than just having quite a negative debate where people feel like they're being told off for doing certain things? Actually, in life, everything in moderation should be the watchword.
Prevention rather than cure.
Exactly.
We need cure as well, but prevention, and all of us taking more responsibility for our own health by eating well, exercising more, and
Daily mile in schools.
And having more exercise and dance in schools, absolutely. Well, the four of us between us, I think we should make an appointment with Wes first thing tomorrow morning. Thank you all very much indeed. Alice, Tom, Diane, thank you so much. Now, there's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. It's an incredible £54,321. Gosh, that's a lot, isn't it? And here, with all the details you need for a chance to make it all yours.
You have the chance to win our biggest cash prize to date in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just the chance to sit back, relax, and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? £54,321 in tax-free cash has to be won. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, coming up, it's time to recap the theatrical highlights of the week with Stefan Kyriazis. What does he make of the Evita revival, I wonder? Well, this is Sunday with Michael Portillo, but for today with me, Angela Rippon, here on GB News.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's completely unacceptable to have a biological man in a female-only changing room. And from my personal point of view, I was abused as a child, and having a man in our changing room is a particular trigger for me. And the trust just did nothing about it, so we had to take things further.
So you complained to the trust about this. You and your colleagues got together, and they just ignored you. They didn't really care about it.
Not a day. They didn't care at all. We wrote a letter of concern. 26 of us signed it, and the response was that we needed to be re-educated. We needed to broaden our mindset, and they backed this trans person 150%.
So, Karen, this person who identifies as Rose, on one occasion they were staring at you or your colleagues' breasts in this changing room and asking, are you getting changed yet? Another of your colleagues had a panic attack. I don't think it was you. Is that accurate?
That was me.
And what do you make of people who call you a TERF or a bigot for complaining about this kind of thing? Because that's what they say.
They do, yes, but there's been loads of positivity out there for us. There's loads of positive comments, and I'm not a bigot. I'm not a TERF. I'm just fighting for what's right. I want to feel safe when I get changed. Yeah. There's what's happened to me could have happened to other people, and I want to be a voice for them to stand up and come forward and say this is not acceptable.
Karen, you're a brave lady, you and your colleagues, and I'm glad. Actually, it was Wes Streeting who intervened in the end, one of the more competent Labour ministers, who told Darlington Hospital, sort this out, you know, pull your finger out, don't be so ridiculous, and he got involved and he sorted it out for you.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portello, with me, Angela Rippon, for today. Well, the arts editor at The Express is Stefan Kyriazis, and he joins me now to review some of the newest plays that are hitting the West End. I know you've had a busy week. Can I just say I did get to see the new production of Fawlty Towers. It was pure nostalgia. As someone who remembers the original television series, we all sat there waiting for Manuel to say, I know nothing. And we waited for the funny walk, and it was laughter from start to finish.
And also, it shows how well constructed it is. You know it all comes together. You can see it all seems like random madness, and then it knits together, and you feel safe because you know it's all under control. It's beautifully built, and I cried with laughter. I thought it was brilliant. So glad you enjoyed that. Not so many laughs coming up now.
No.
So first of all, we've got Evita. So Evita is the big hoo-ha in the West End. Hordes of people now coming to stand outside the Palladium.
Can we explain to everybody exactly what happens? Because people outside of London are going to be saying, what the heck are they talking about?
Don't Cry for Me, Argentina, the big number, is traditionally sung from the Casa Rosada to her public.
Yes,
so what they've done,
show.
And Jamie Lloyd, the director, well, in real life as well, she addressed, Eva Peron addressed the people. So Jamie Lloyd loves taking handheld cameras and getting people outside theatres. It's becoming one of his kind of gimmicks.
Yeah.
He did it with Sunset Boulevard. This time she stands, Rachel Ziegler, comes onto the balcony outside the Palladium, does Don't Cry for Me, Argentina, does it, and you have hundreds of people now every single day are going to see it.
Free show.
Thousands, every show. So it's exactly like it. We have a gorgeous clip to give you a little bit of impression what it's like.
They are seeing the recording of what's happening outside.
Yes. So it's not a recording, it's a live stream.
Sorry, the live.
So we have a picture somewhere mixed up with the ones I sent over of how we see it, and she's on a gigantic screen.
Yeah.
So I went in, I'd seen the production in Regent's Park 5 years ago, which is more or less the same. Hated it, hated everything about it. It was overly deconstructed. She sang that song in her underpants, which just I thought was heinous. However, Jamie Lloyd's rethought a lot of it. So we see the big screen, and basically it's like a telebroadcast or something. This is politics. This is raising the rabble. This is selling your product to your people. And there you go. And when we were in the theatre and it came up on the big screen, bearing in mind some of these seats are £350, and the big number's not there.
Yeah.
The whole theatre gasped. Everybody, I got goosebumps because you felt like you were part of this huge moment. They panned across the crowd. We cheered inside. When she came back on stage, it was like our hero had returned. You know, we all wanted to do this. It was electrifying. I was sat next to, I shouldn't say, but I was sat next to Richard E. Grant by pure coincidence, which was bliss. You know, and he knows his stuff.
Yes.
And I cheekily turned and looked at him. He had tears rolling down his eyes. So it's deeply moving. It's a very modern take, very little feel of Hispanic culture. Everyone's in black and white monochrome. This is what he does. Tiered steps, and then a big backdrop that just says Evita. Stadium lighting. Even for me, the sound's a little bit too loud. It bludgeons you. But it's a magnificent score. Rachel Ziegler can sing, my God. And she doesn't just do a little head trill. She goes full soprano. There we go. She does full soprano. phenomenal voice. She's a bit too young, but this show just opens and goes all the way through. She's a megastar. She's a pop star. She's that type of icon. So it sells it that way. She's superb at it. She's very charismatic. Some of the nuances are lost. The guy playing Che, who was supposed to be our very cynical commentator, to let us understand that, hey, it's all glossy on the surface, but there's a lot of messy dirt going on underneath on both sides. He didn't quite get everything out of Tim Rice's lyrics that I would like, but I just sat there. It blows you back in your seat and then it blasts you to your feet. There were standing ovations during the show. So it's a huge experience, and it's what it is.
Yeah.
Don't go for a classical Pretty Evita. This is an experience. And as that, I was overwhelmed. I was very impressed.
What is interesting, you saying that, a lot of people who had paid £300 a ticket were quite cross that the big number was happening outside, not live in the theatre. But the way you've described it, I mean, with the people coming outside, they get a free show, clearly. That's why so many people are turning up for a bit of the West End that costs them nothing. But it is a new way of looking at this. And clearly, on the audience when you went, it had a very emotional impact.
It certainly does. It's sold all over the internet, so everybody's going nuts about it. People are coming in, tourists, Londoners, all my friends are talking about it. This is also selling theatre, which is great. People are like, this is exciting, it's new, it's not stuffy. This is selling London and the UK. This is happening here, nowhere else in the world, in our West End. Oh my goodness, Hollywood star belting out to the public. Extraordinary. We should probably quickly crack on to
the next. No, what else have you been looking at?
We've got Quadrophenia, a bit of dance for you. So I've got a little bit of a clip for that as well. So it's The Who's Mod Rock Ballet, the film, Quadrophenia 1973. Sorry, the music, 1973, film 79. It's on at Sadler's Wells at the moment. It's on a little tour. We've got a little clip for you to get you in the mood.
Right. Looks really quite exciting, and it's the full album.
It's reworked, so it's the music. There's kind of a lot of the themes just come back like a ballet score or something. So it's not song, 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 but recognisable. Reworked orchestrations from the Royal Philharmonic in 2015. There was actually an album. Rachel Fuller, Pete Townshend's wife, did it. The music is lush. Spectacular. A lot of the critics didn't like it. It was too cinematic or not cheesy, but a little bit too predictable. I loved it because I like that sort of thing. But a little bit like Evita as well, there's really no space for nuance. It is rumbling, rolling, sort of thunderous music all the time. The choreography is good. It's not brilliant. It's a shame. The guy that's the lead there plays Jimmy, who's the young, disaffected mod from London. Not happy in his life, working class lad, wants to be more, wants to be seen, but doesn't know how to do it, and can be a little bit toxic. They all go off down to Brighton, and then you have the huge fight on the seafront with the mods and the rockers. All of that is very well done. The beautiful number between the parents dancing, where that's the one moment they're together and then they pull apart again. They're both deeply unhappy. So there's lots of good storytelling in it. Paris Fitzpatrick, that plays Billy, is one of my favourite dancers. He dances a lot with Matthew Bourne, has won awards. He's gorgeous. It's a beautiful experience. I'm thrilled again. Different audience, different way of looking at dance, which has to be encouraged. It's on another week at Sadler's Wells, then it's off to the Lowry in Salford. I think we can look for a national tour or possibly a return to London. It's a beautiful piece, just needs a little bit of tightening and zhuzhing a bit, but as an experience, it's dance, but not as you know it. The same as, you know, the Evita thing. New audiences, new experiences, things reviving and thriving. So I think it's exciting.
Speaking of which, I actually had my first visit to Stratford East.
Oh, yes.
Sadler's Wells, the theatre there, purpose-built for dance. What an experience. Really, really worth going to see. But, oh, I love the sound of that, though. Thank you very much indeed, Stefan.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, great. And if it's got a national tour, hopefully, or at least going up
I think
it's going up to Manchester.
It's heading that way, and I hope there'll be more.
Lots more people having an opportunity to see it, Stefan. Thank you so much. Coming up, possible evidence of a Roman villa has been discovered in Gloucestershire following extensive archaeology work. I'm going to be finding out more from the site manager next. But before that, your latest news headlines from Lewis Mackenzie.
harder by the recent U-turn on welfare changes. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson refused to rule out any tax rises in the autumn.
You know, those are matters for the Chancellor. It is important that the numbers add up, that we adhere to our fiscal rules, and we've got a clear plan.
The Conservative Party wants to ban foreigners from claiming key disability benefits to reduce the cost of Britain's welfare bill. Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride says this sets a clear dividing line between the Tories, Labour and Reform.
The government should come forward with a discussion document to look at this whole area, because we do believe that British citizenship should mean something.
The Met boss has called for the creation of mega forces in England so officers would be able to share modern technologies and reduce expensive governance. The Prince of Darkness, Ozzy Osbourne, delighted tens of thousands of fans in an emotional farewell gig in Birmingham last night. Those are your headlines for now. More from me at 1 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, this is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. If you are heading to Wimbledon today, we could see some thundery showers around throughout the first parts of this afternoon, or because low pressure is in charge across the UK, providing a reasonably unsettled theme, and it's particularly this front pushing southeastwards across England that is already providing some quite heavy pulses of rain. And across southeastern areas of England, those could intensify into thunderstorms throughout the rest of today. Some hail, strong gusty winds around, so it is worth taking care. Despite that, we are holding on to a fair amount of humidity in the south as well, so temperatures here will manage to climb towards the mid-20s of degrees Celsius. There'll be lighter showers across Wales, southwestern England, 20-21 degrees Celsius possible here. Again, a lot of cloud around for northern England, but hopefully some brighter spells emerging for Northern Ireland, but more so across northern Scotland as we head throughout the day. But again, still the odd shower to watch out for. There is quite a brisk breeze around today, and that will grow stronger, particularly through the North Channel, affecting coastal regions here down across the Isle of Man during this evening, gusts of 40-45 miles an hour. But that breeze is also pushing all this cloud and rain further southward, so some further pulses of heavy rain possible across England and Wales during the forthcoming nights, but otherwise some clear spells developing, and it will be relatively fresh. Temperatures in towns and cities dropping back to 10-14 degrees Celsius, but might even see single figures in rural parts of Scotland. There'll be that heavy rain still lingering for parts of Wales, southern England first thing tomorrow, but it will eventually clear its way off, and certainly into the afternoon the sunshine should break through a bit more readily across many areas. A few showers always skirting around some coastal districts, but temperatures fairly around average for the time of year, 20-23 degrees Celsius, but we do hold on to that breeze, so it will feel cool if you're exposed to that. We are, though, likely to be seeing more sunshine as we head throughout the week, and that will come with rising temperatures, potentially 30 degrees Celsius. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo, with me, Angela Rippon. Now, archaeological excavations in the village of Willersey in Gloucestershire have revealed an exciting new find. An extensive settlement dating from the early Middle Iron Age through to the Roman period has shone the spotlight on possible evidence of a Roman villa. Now, the dig was initially sparked following the discovery of 2 iron Roman cavalry swords, possibly displaying traces of their scabbards. Peter Buzz Busby is Cotswold Archaeology's lead site manager at the dig. He joins me now. Buzz, just how exciting is this find when presumably you didn't expect anything of the sort in your area?
Extremely. It's sort of universal excitement. Everybody who's seen them is just absolutely thrilled and enthralled by them.
What do they look like? Explain it to me. Tell me what you found on the site.
Metal detectorist Glenn found them during a metal detecting rally in 2023, and they're about 3 feet long, and they contain a lot of corrosion on the surface, which is which contains some evidence of the scabbard they were buried in. During the evaluation, we found evidence for robbed out stone walls and roundhouses from the early Middle Iron Age, as well as lots of finds, including plaster, which you can see in the picture now, square box tiles, which form flues that come out from hypercore systems, which would have provided underfloor heating. One of the things that we know, there must be a villa within the near vicinity of these Roman swords. So all in all, just absolutely amazing.
Now, what would we do without the metal detectorists? I mean, you know, these people going around with those things that beep. What would you do without them? Now, if indeed there was a Roman villa there, and the fact that you might have that underfloor heating, I suppose, is a good clue, because, you know, most homes in this country don't have underfloor heating even now in the 21st century. The Romans were way ahead, and the Greeks were way, way ahead of us. What does that tell you about the importance of that part of the county and that particular settlement?
It tells us an awful lot. It's obviously an important settlement. More excavation would have to happen at some point in the future to determine just how much this settlement differs from others in the area. However, the Roman cavalry swords are so rare, the finding of them, it makes the site exceedingly special. We also found a human burial, probably from the Iron Age, with a iron band round their upper arm. And that again is massively unusual. That at the time was probably the 3rd such individual found in the United Kingdom. So the site has many aspects that set it above many others in the area.
Well, what we're seeing there at the moment, Buzz, is a field. It's probably on some farmer's land. I mean, I don't know where it is exactly. But what is going to happen to it? Are you going to be able to excavate it so that the public can come and see what you found and the extent of this exciting new discovery? Or will it all have to be just filled in and these beautiful pieces that you found put in a museum somewhere?
Well, initially, the swords that were found in 2023 by Glenn will go on display in August in the Corinium Museum in Cirencester, with some information there. The site we excavated in January this year, in the grey gloom, the wet gloom of January, has all been backfilled and turned to farmland. And over the next year, all our findings will be analysed so we can make a better story. We can tell the narrative as we understand it. And then at that point, hopefully we will get to go back and excavate a little bit more to refine the story and to fill in some of the gaps we already know exist in it. However, it is highly unlikely that we will display the remains. Archaeological remains, once they've been buried for many years, are extremely fragile and susceptible to frost and rain. So what we tend to do is to tell those through digital means, through camera clips, through displays in museums and things.
Well, at least they will be available to the public to get a better idea of what you found and really just how exciting that is. Buzz, thank you for sharing that with us this morning. Thank you very much indeed. And at least you've got good weather now to be doing the dig. Thank you so much.
Right.
Bye-bye now, Buzz.
Thank you for having me on.
Bye-bye now. Now, coming up, Marilyn Monroe is, of course, a household name, but how much do you actually know about the circumstances around her death and, indeed, about the girl who grew up to be a Hollywood star? I'm going to reveal more next. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, with me, Angela Rippon, on GB News.
Be nice to escape the grey.
Clear skies, here we come.
As clear as our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
The fresh northwesterly winds that are currently across the UK are also beginning to spread into other areas of Western Europe and helping to ease the heat wave that they've had here recently. Still, though, there are plenty of heavy showers and thunderstorms here, particularly across parts of Iberia, the Alps and towards the Balkans. The heat, though, is getting squeezed towards eastern areas of continental Europe, and so here temperatures are still going to be notably above average as we head over the next few days, but with some sunshine.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
King Charles is stepping back from one of the most traditional royal duties. That's riding on horseback for the Trooping of the Colour, which is coming up, I think, in a week's time, isn't it? At 76 and undergoing cancer treatment, he'll now take the salute from a carriage, just as Queen Elizabeth did in her later years. But as the King trades saddle for state coach, it raises a bigger question. Does the pomp and pageantry of royal events like Trooping the Colour still resonate with modern Britain? Or are we holding on to rituals that no really reflect the country, and do we really care?
I think the spectacle is important because it's symbolic, OK, and people really respond to that notion of heritage and grandeur. But I think it's about more than that. It's about constitutional monarchy. There are three key points here. Constitutional monarchy produces higher standards of living than republics. It protects property rights and individual property because in the long term, it's not as vulnerable to ideology. And it holds a check on politicians as well. I'd much rather have King Charles than President Blair. And it's about continuity.
Legoland is just a short hop, skip and jump away from Windsor Castle. It gets many more visitors than any royal castle or other event. So we don't need the royals to have spectacle. We can have spectacle without it. And
Okay,
I think,
but you're not suggesting chopping their heads off, are you?
Oh, no, of course not. Of course not. No, I'd be very kind and gentle. But the one point that was made was that the royals are part of British culture and tradition. Well, in fact, the royals are German descent, who were basically, by their own internal agreement, took over the British throne.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo, but for today with me, Angela Rippon. Now, before there was Marilyn Monroe, there was Norma Jean, a young girl who spent her childhood between foster homes and orphanages, but who managed to penetrate the glitzy world of Hollywood to become a global superstar. But she also had a history of drug addiction and abuse, so her death in August of 1962 was deemed to be suicide as the result of an overdose. But nothing about Marilyn was ever that straightforward. And over the past 60 years, circumstances of her death have been subject of speculation and conspiracy, with the suggestion that her relationship with the two Kennedy brothers, both Jack and Bobby, was seen as a threat to national security. So were the mafia or even the FBI involved? That question mark still hangs there. So this latest book, The Last Days of Marilyn Monroe, by blockbuster crime writer James Patterson and best-selling author Imogen Edward-Jones, might provide the answers. Well, Imogen Edward-Jones joins me now, and I have to say, Imogen, that although this is called The Last Days of Marilyn Monroe, actually in the book you cover her entire life up to that death in 1962. And what is interesting, it's been written like a novel, not like an academic paper on the situation and the circumstances. I suppose understandable when you've got James Patterson as the lead author on the cover of the book. But because you contain so much dialogue in there, particularly of people who have been dead for some years, how can we be sure that what you are writing is fact and not pure fiction?
Good question. It was a sort of stylistic decision that we decided to come up with, create a proper narrative. I mean, James has done this before. He did the Last Days of John Lennon as well. It's a sort of stylistic way of creating a narrative, but at the same time, a lot of the conversations we have got sort of not necessarily contemporaneous notes, but there have been a lot of biographies written about Marilyn before. And if you read enough of the biographies, you work out that some of the conversations that are in there have been used verbatim somewhere else, if you see what I mean.
Mm. I have to take issue with something in this, because when I was given the book, I have read it, and I found it absolutely fascinating. But it does say on the back, born in the shadows, lived in the spotlight, was she murdered? Drawn from rigorous research, and there are 11 pages of references that you've gone to for research. Drawn from rigorous research, this book seeks answers. But you don't give us answers. You do not anywhere say whether or not you think she was murdered. Was this a conspiracy theory? Were the FBI involved? Did she really commit suicide? You don't actually say it anywhere. Why?
I think because for legal reasons, it was very heavily lawyered towards the end of the when the book came, just before the book came out. I mean, I've got my theories,
which is.
Well, I genuinely think that that she was murdered by mistake by her housekeeper, to be very honest with you. I think the Kennedys were involved right the way up until that point, but I don't think they actually managed to murder her. I'm convinced it's the housekeeper because of the level of barbiturates that was in her system. There were so many barbiturates in her bloodstream, but there were none in her stomach.
I mean, I have to say... Sorry, you were going to say, I apologise, I interrupted. The theory is...
So I think she was given an enema by her housekeeper, a barbiturate enema.
But how would she have done that without her struggling?
No, because Marilyn, she wasn't murdered. Eunice Murray, who was the housekeeper, was not a qualified nurse. So Marilyn used to use enemas a lot in order to sort of lose weight, and colonics and things like that. And so that's what I think, that she couldn't sleep, so she was given a barbiturate enema by her housekeeper, and so it was basically death by accident.
I mean, you do leave all sorts of breadcrumbs. I did find that interesting because when you describe what happened, you say she apparently had so many drugs in her system, but there was no glass that would have contained the water with which she would have drunk them. The dog was not in the room. You had Peter Lawford saying, we've got to get the little red book in which she kept all her notes about her conversations with Bobby Kennedy and Jack Kennedy. I mean, you leave lots... Oh, and there wasn't a full autopsy done on every organ in her body. I mean, you give all of these breadcrumbs. Are you also hoping then that the readers will come to their own conclusion about what actually happened to Marilyn?
I mean, what is extraordinary is it's one of the biggest cover-ups of the last century, I think, that no one has ever actually managed to bring anyone to justice for it. She was, she was abused by the Hollywood system anyway, right from the very beginning. I mean, the level of barbiturates and uppers and downers and stuff that she took, which was all sort of facilitated by a sort of cabal of doctors who seemed to prey on her and rather enjoy the proximity that they had with her. She was like this sort of a moth to a flame, and everybody wanted a piece of her. And I think it's fascinating, her story, but I also I think that in order for it to have been a cover-up, there have to be so many people involved in it, from the FBI to the CIA to the Kennedys. I mean, there would have to be over 100 people to have sort of kept their silence for it to have been a conspiracy. I mean, that's what I think is the odd thing. But nothing seemed to be. I mean, the autopsy is shocking how inadequate it was. There's one point where she's put in a cupboard. Her body's put in a cupboard for an hour and a half because nobody knows what to do with it. I mean, it's absolutely bizarre the level of ineptitude that is demonstrated in that.
I did enjoy reading the book, I have to say. I wonder if too many people realise, even though they know that she had an affair with Jack Kennedy and with Bobby Kennedy, that she was hoping that Jack Kennedy was going to divorce Jackie and that she'd be the First Lady.
Yes, until somebody told her she wasn't first lady material, which was...
well, that was Peter Lawford, wasn't it?
I mean, she was a fantasist, I think. She was in love with the idea of being in love. She never really had a father. It's almost nobody quite knows who her father was, least of all her. And when she does go and finally try and track him down, he doesn't want to meet her, which is absolutely tragic.
I think everybody should read the book to find out more about... She was charismatic, but oh my goodness, was she abused in her life. Thank you very much. And I did enjoy reading the book, and thank you for joining us and talking about it. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of my guests for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to share your company. Michael will be back at the same time next week, but up next on GB News is Dawn Neeson with The Weekend. Dawn, what's coming up on the programme?
Thank you very much, Angela. A cracking debate there about Marilyn Monroe. I love that story.